Alright, well, we're back with some more Harmonic podcasts because I'm not creative with naming, and just a little smidge late due to getting a little bit of COVID today with the plan to discuss flaws in video games and what makes up a flaw and everything around that. During the last discussion, we discussed game reviews and review scores and how much impact they have, and this discussion might be building off of that a little smidge, so if anyone wants to see that, that'll be in the description below. This should be a pretty standalone, relatively thingamabob as well. We'll see. We'll see how it pans out. We'll probably expand on some ideas, but yeah. How's it going, Seit?
What's up? It's going pretty well for me. It's going for you.
Pretty alright. I'm feeling a lot better now that I'm not coughing up a lung and I can actually do this.
Yeah, you had COVID for a minute there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still kind of figuring this thing out, this podcast thing. I don't even know if we want to call them podcasts, but...
I mean, it's labeled as a podcast on YouTube since... you know, that's an actual thing that you can make now. There's a whole, like, shelf for it. There's a whole tab for it on YouTube now that has different playlists and stuff, even though this is the only podcast. I don't know what kind of channel would do multiple podcasts, but yeah, there's a shelf
we got,
on the channel.
We got 5 podcasts going on this channel.
Making like 5 different series that all get their own podcast plays. Yeah, when you make a playlist now on YouTube, you can choose whether it's a normal playlist or a podcast. It's honestly kind of weird, but hey, I guess podcasts are kind of big nowadays, so YouTube wants to play into it. And I guess that's what we're doing, playing into it. And it lets us discuss more subjects and stuff like that that I don't always have the time to make video essays for. Because video essays take me a whole long time. Just recently wrapped up the Scarlet and Violet video essay, and that took me the past 7 months because I started working on it before the games even came out. So, no. Don't exactly have the time to put 7 months of work into every single topic that's worth covering. So, that's why we started this.
Why do all that? You could just have a podcast and get it all over with in one day.
Yeah, get it done all in one fell swoop, and then you talk things out, and then it's great. So that's the idea.
Well, today we're going to be talking about what actually makes a flaw in video games, which might sound kind of like weird, but I think it makes sense because think about it. I was playing, the game that made me think about this was Shinigami Tensei 3, which is kind of a niche game, but I was playing it and I really like it. I thought it was pretty heavily flawed, but when I talked to a lot of the fans of the game, they're like, no, like, we actually like it like this. Like, you may think it's flawed, but we enjoy this. And,
for really the reasons that you said were flaws.
What happened?
I was just asking if you meant for the reasons that you said were flaws or reasons that they enjoyed it.
Well, it's just a lot of the things that I thought were flawed about the game were things that they actually really enjoyed. Like, for example, the story is really barren and like almost nothing is told to you at all anywhere, but a lot of people like that because they enjoy being able to fill in the blanks and kind of sort of come up with their own fan fiction about it. Like, that's part of the appeal to them, like, it's what they want, and that's clearly what the devs seem to intend while making the game. So it's like, if it's what the fans are asking for and the devs are doing it intentionally, is it still a flaw, even if it's what we usually consider objective flaws? Does that still count as a flaw? What's the difference there? Because if it's just what they want, but it's not what most people are going to want, we still say that's a flaw because, like, doesn't that mean that games like Call of Duty and FIFA are automatically better than stuff like Bloodborne or Zelda just because they're more popular games, more people enjoy them? Or Pokemon, which I know you would agree with. Because it's more popular and sells better, does that mean...
Yeah, I've been seeing that argument a lot lately in terms of Scarlet and Violet. I don't know if I'm starting to get like more Scarlet and Violet stuff recommended to me now that I've published that essay or what's going on, but I've been seeing a lot of stuff cropping up recently of people being like, oh, high numbers, great success, that means good, and it's not flawed.
Yeah, no. I mean, the thing is with Pokemon even, it's like, I feel like the devs didn't really intend for it to be that way.
Yeah, probably not. Just the result of time constraints and stuff.
Even though Shinigami Tensei I do think has a lot of flaws that the devs did not intend, a lot of the issues I had were clearly intentional. So it's like, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. What actually determines a flaw? Where do we draw the line? Where does it stop just being subjective and become a little more sensible and objective?
Yeah, there are definitely some cases of that I've brought up in various video essays over the years where, you know, there are some cases where I'll mention, like, hey, this is my opinion that this isn't all that great. Like, mentioning in the Scarlet Violet video essay, for example, these new designs for Suicune and Verizon, I'm not big on them. But, that's completely opinionated. Anyone can, disagree. It's whatever. It's not that big a deal there. But ones that actually delve into a game analysis kind of standpoint. Like, one big example of that was in my Fire Emblem Three Houses essay, where I talked about meaningless decisions. And I was actually reviewing my old lecture notes from an old class on meaningless decisions to kind of recap myself on that a little bit. Where what that game does is it does have a very impactful decision that you make at the beginning of the game, which of the 3 houses you want to go with, which is going to impact what story you get, what characters you can get, so on and so forth. But the problem with the decision is you don't actually know that it's going to decide who you side with in this war and drastically change the course of the story. Halfway through the game, a little bit more than halfway through the game, a whole war breaks out, the whole nation is against one another, and which nation you decide to side with is just whichever class of students you happen to teach at the beginning of the game. So the game,
very beginning, damn, that's crazy.
So the game presents you this choice of which house to teach, when really it's a choice of who are you going to ally with, through thick and thin, and side with the morality of in an ethical argument that you don't even know exists yet at the very beginning. And in my video essay on that, I identified that as a hidden decision. It was a meaningless decision because you don't know the consequences. You don't have any grasp of it. There's no way to know. I had some people that weren't very happy that, I said that, as with whenever I say anything, but,
Yeah, just, part of the life of being a YouTuber, I guess.
Yeah.
So wait, that game has other decisions that you consider meaningless, or that's just the one that you consider meaningless there?
No, it had several instances of meaningless decisions. I kind of stumbled on that word a little bit there. For another example of it was all of your students, you kind of develop them in class, and you can develop proficiencies in weapons like sword, lance, axe, bow, stuff like that. But each student is going to have certain things that they excel in and therefore grow in faster, and some things that they grow in slower. So, for example, I just heard thunder there. I don't know if my microphone picked that up. Hopefully this doesn't randomly cut out at some point. So for example, if you have a student that will grow faster in axes, you're not going to teach them in swords. The game, during a lot of trailers and promotional material, promoted this idea of it's the most customizable game in the whole series. You can develop anyone any way you want. And yeah, you can, but they're going to be worse than if you develop them the way that the developers clearly want you to. So it's another meaningless decision. It's like if a game presents you a really good gun and a really bad gun, why would you choose the really bad one?
Like, oh, you have a decision here. You can be terrible or you can be overpowered. Which one are you going to pick? It's like, most people are obviously going to pick one. Not that much of a decision.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say is they've got all these meaningless decisions, and the one decision that's actually meaningful, they don't even tell you about.
Yeah. Unless you figured and followed the game enough before you played it. But if you're going in blind, you get to this academy, the archbishop of this church academy place is like, all right, which of the houses do you want to teach? And first you go chat with some of the students to get to know them a little bit. And you go back in and she's like, all right, choose one of the 3. You choose one of the 3 and then you teach them for half of the game and get basically the same story during that section, no matter which house you choose. And then the entire continent breaks out into war, each side having a very different ethical stance, and you side with whichever one you chose to teach at the very beginning of the game.
Yeah, that sounds like a thought to me, and I'll get into why in a second. Why don't you finish your thought, though?
Oh, that was basically the thought there. Mostly just that it can't really be a meaningful decision if you have no way to understand the consequences. And I find it very ironic considering no one route of that game is like a true best ending or anything like that. That's something that Fire Emblem has done before with Fates, where it's like, Birthright, you side with this one kingdom. Conquest, you side with this one kingdom. But in Revelations, you side with neither. You become friends with everybody, and you defeat the true big bad. So that's like the true ending, the best ending. There's nothing like that in Three Houses. No ending is completely good, and no ending is completely bad. They're just different outcomes, different ways for things to go. And therefore, it makes the argument that there is no magic solution where everything works out. All you can do is stick true to what you believe in and see it through to the end. But you can't even choose what you believe in because it's a hidden decision. So.
Oh, okay. So that argument doesn't even work.
Yeah. So it's like the whole moral of its story doesn't really. Yeah.
Nocturne, I mean, this is a little unrelated, I guess, but Nocturne kind of does that too, where it's like you get asked these completely vague questions, like they're so vague, and you can answer them yes or no, and depending on how you answer, it will literally determine what ending you get. It's like, how would you know that? It's like, it's such insignificant random questions, but depending on how you answer them, I get one ending or another. I ended up getting the ending I wanted because I was like neutral on everything, what I wanted, but still, I had no idea what ending I was going to get.
Yeah.
No way for me to tell.
I mean, I feel like there's some games that try to play into it in a meaningful way. Like, look at Telltale's old games, like The Walking Dead, for example, where it's like your decisions have an outcome, but you know what kind of outcome they'll have in the short term right then and there. And then, you know, it follows a natural path to the long term, as opposed to, you know, one decision that's completely unrelated in the now. Like, your name at the beginning is going to decide, you know, your moral stance at the end or something like that, you know?
Exactly, like, it's always going to be the same ending. But, I do have my theory on what actually makes a flaw in video games. A flaw is a contradiction of game design. That's my theory. So that means, for example, if a game has a really wild and hard to, like, it has like really weird controls that are just like difficult to manage, you might think that's bad game design, but in a vacuum, I don't think it's automatically a flaw. It could be a flaw if that lack of control contradicted something else. Like, for example, if the level design requires you to be really precise and accurate, but the controls just don't allow for that at all, then that's a flaw, because the controls are contradicting the level design.
And it's going to depend on the context in which it's used. For example, if controls are so wild and all over the place and there's a button assigned for every single thing, but the video game is a learn to type kind of game or something like that, or, you know, some sort of learning experience game or something geared towards little kids, then it's like, yeah, that's not great. Or if you're trying to make a fighting game that is going to appeal to those that play fighting games competitively, and you only have like the left stick and one button do something or something like that, then it's like, yeah, that's not great.
It's not gonna work, yeah. Or if you're making a game to appeal to competitive players, then you should make Smash Ultimate. But anyway, like that example of contradiction of game design, staying on Nocturne, is the last time I'm gonna talk about it, I promise. That game has a lot of dungeons that have these like little puzzles on them. Yeah, I promise this is not gonna be just like me slamming on Nocturne. It has like little puzzles in them. And they're not really hard puzzles, but they just require you to kind of walk around the dungeon and explore to get lay of the land so you can figure out everything you need to do. But the problem is, these puzzles are not safe areas. So the entire time you're trying to solve this puzzle and figure things out, you're getting constantly interrupted by random encounters that can last several minutes. So it's like, I'll figure something out, be like, okay, I got that, into an encounter, and just like completely forget whatever I was doing before. It's like, wait a minute, was I? That happens all the time. So your ability to solve puzzles is being interrupted by the battle system, and that I kind of feel like is a flaw.
Just because you don't really get that gameplay kind of flow, the constant interruptions and stuff.
Yeah, because it's like, how am I going to be solving puzzles and there's just constant battles going on? Like, this doesn't feel like it mixes.
So it's like trying to go through a cave in a Pokemon game, getting swarmed by Zubats, but also having to deal with puzzle elements at the same time.
Yeah, literally, exactly. That's a pretty good example. Even more insufferable in Nocturne, because you can't just run away. You have to fight them, and battles last several. Well, you can run away, but the way it works is very inconsistent. The way it works is that if you fail to run away, you're pretty much gonna die. You just forfeit your entire turn, and enemies can kill you in one.
Oh. So not exactly practical then.
Not usually. Just only something you should do if you're desperate. But like a more positive example of that would be like the Arkham games. I don't know if you've ever seen or played Batman Arkham.
I've seen a smidge, but I haven't played it.
Yeah, they're very good games. But Arkham games, the controls, they're very weird in a vacuum. But if any Arkham fans heard me say that, they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? The controls are great. Yeah. If you actually play the game, like, it's fine. You literally will never have any issue with the controls ever. Because even though the controls are kind of weird in a vacuum, the game never makes you do anything with you at odds with those controls. It's not like R64's camera. You just can't see what you're doing. Like, no, you can always do whatever you need to do with the controls at all times. So it actually feels perfect, even though in a vacuum, controls would seem flawed. Like that's an example of sort of the opposite of a contradiction. Seems like it wouldn't work, but it actually, the game is actually designed around the control, so it works perfectly.
So you mean that you can still do everything that you need to do from the perspective of, like, it's clearly designed for that one specific game, and once you get the hang of it, it really flows then.
Exactly. You don't even really have to get the hang of it. It's like designed so seamlessly.
Yeah, I was a smidge confused for a second whether you meant that, or whether you meant a game that gives you a great many number of options, but you never have to know how all of them work and have to use all of them to get through. Like a good example of that is Roller Coaster Tycoon, where I got the first Roller Coaster Tycoon game from a cereal box when I was a wee lad. And, back when they did that, and I popped that disc in my computer. And first starting out, you know, there's so many tabs and buttons at the top that do so many different things. I just learned like the basic ones I needed at first. Started, you know, playing with just that. Over time, I started to trek into the area of trying some of the other buttons and being like, oh, that's what that does. That's such a useful tool. And I gradually learned the game that way, while still being able to actively play and have fun, because I never needed every single button that's at the top. I thought that was an interesting design there.
Arcade games do also do that, but I was just more referring to what you said earlier, where it's just that the game is built around the controls. So even though the controls do seem like they would have flaws, you're never ever put in a situation where those flaws could come up to like force it. Works out.
Gotcha,
That's my thought on what a flaw is. It's like a contradiction of some kind.
Sounds right to me. I know that some things are going to you know, feel right to some people, but not right to others in terms of their optimal play experience. I think one of the biggest examples that I experienced of that was when I was playing Bravely Default 2. And I don't know if you ever played any of the Bravely Default games or not.
Oh, I have not.
So the first two games, despite the fact that I was just referring to Bravely Default 2, it's actually the third game. So the first two games, Bravely Default, yeah, I guess they don't know how numbers work. But the first two games,
Bravely Default 2 is the third game, you're saying?
Yes, it was Bravely Default, Bravely Second, Bravely Default 2.
What?
Yeah.
Why would they call it Bravely? Okay.
I guess because Bravely Second was a direct sequel, like set in the same universe, same story, whereas Bravely Default 2 was like completely different universe, different stories, stuff like that. Maybe, I don't know.
So if they come out with another one, is it going to be Bravely Second? No,
Bravely Second 2.
Yeah, or
God.
2 Second. Like what?
I sure hope that game doesn't get a sequel. Doesn't deserve it.
What are these Xbox gaming conventions?
Anyway, the first two games, Bravely Default and Second on the 3DS, I love those games gameplay-wise. They were very customizable. You have 4 party members, and you can assign them a job and a sub-job, and there's all kinds of customizability. You can even get skills from other jobs and stuff like that. It got very customizable, and the game was all about creating your own solutions, creating your own combinations, and getting through. And there were definitely some bosses that I would struggle with and stuff, but across Default and Second, I never felt like I couldn't surpass some boss with my current build. Might need to go level up a little bit, but with my current build, I felt like if I do it just right, I could still get through. It rewarded my creativity, and using my own custom builds, I was able to get through. Bravely Default 2 kind of threw that out the window with the fact that bosses will just completely counter certain builds. If you they had literal counter skills that were counters for the dumbest things. If you hit them with a physical attack, some boss might have physical attack counter, where they'll punish you hitting for them hitting you with, you know, much more damage there. And it's like, well, I guess I gotta reclass my entire party now to a magic build. Or let's say a boss has magic counter or something like that. And, you know, you use a magic attack against them. And then they'll just counter that. And it's like, well, I guess I gotta redesign my entire party for this one boss again. Or, this one boss, what was her name? I don't even remember. I think it was Hanemal. I don't quite remember. But she had a physical counter that not only would damage you, but would like blind most of your party as punishment for hitting her with a physical attack. It was so dumb. And I was calling it out for, you know, how silly this is and how this isn't, you know, meaningful challenge. It's just silly there. And I had some people that would get mad at me being like, oh, it's really easy to beat. You just need to go to this section of the world or this shop and buy a bunch of accessories that make you immune to blindness and then equip them and then it's easy. And it's like, that's not really strategy, though. That's not really coming up with your own strategies. That is the strategic equivalent of a toddler matching the right shapes to the right holes to, like, learn dimensions.
Yeah, no, that's funny. That's a good example.
It's literally that level of strategic thinking. It's not meaningful creativity like with the first couple of games where my own builds would be able to make it through every challenge. That game felt a lot more like it expected you to change out your builds specifically for certain bosses and felt a lot more restrictive because of that. There were even some bosses that would just be immune to some damage types. It wasn't a lot, but there was a few in there, which was really annoying. If you're using swords, bosses just isn't going to take any damage. All right, time to reclass to something that's not using swords, I guess, because this unit's basically useless. It's so dumb.
Arbitrarily, you can't use swords.
There wasn't a lot of bosses like that. It was just a couple, but the couple instances that they came up, I was just like, but why though? Genuinely, but why though? So
they don't
dumb.
like you in particular.
I guess so. Like the previous games of Bravely Default and Second, it was pretty obvious if a boss was going to resist something. There was never like take 0 damage against something, but you know, the boss Rusalka, which is this water boss, obviously don't use a water attack against the water boss, you know, stuff like that, where it's like, you know, it's pretty evident. But you fight this one dude and it's just like 0 damage from sword. It's like, really? Really?
There's no like reason. You just can't be hit by swords.
Yeah, it was a little smidge silly there. So that was an example of something where some people did like it. Some people felt like they did enjoy changing up their build for every single boss to tailor to that boss's specific BS. I didn't like that. I liked being able to generally look at my party and make builds that look good generally for the game and figure out my way to get through, as opposed to changing out everything for every single boss that I encounter along the way to tailor specifically to them. I just find that kind of annoying, having to, you know, change all my builds every single time. And
I have to go back and change everything just for one boss. It's so annoying. But I guess there's actually something else I was thinking of, because I said it was I said my idea of a flaw was contradicting game design, but like not everything that feels bad in a game is a contradiction. Some stuff just feels bad, and you can't really put your finger on why. Like what you were saying, some people like it, some people don't. It's like, can you really call that a flaw though? If it just feels bad to a lot of people but not some other people, then like, is that a flaw? You determine that.
Bravely Default 2, I certainly would, at least, but but in general, I know that there's a lot more subjective things where it's like, this doesn't really vibe with me. Or there's a lot of games that I've played that a lot of people really like that just aren't really for me. Like, for example, when I played Animal Crossing New Horizons on the channel when it first came out to showcase that as a new release and stuff. I get why people like it, but it just wasn't really for me because it felt too slow when I wanted to go do things. Like, let's say I broke my axe and I needed to go craft a new axe, and my materials are in my house, and, you know, I have my crafting table outside. So it's like, I go into my house, loading screen. I grab the materials from my house inventory. I go back outside, loading screen. I craft the thing I need. Now I have some materials left over, so I go back into my house, loading screen. I deposit my leftover materials so I don't fill up too much inventory so I can get other stuff. I leave my house again, loading screen. I now spent like the past minute just crafting this axe, whereas if I'm playing, you know, games with crafting that I grew up a little bit more with, like Minecraft, where just open a crafting table and craft it and then easy peasy. Or if you need to change out materials, you can do that in a chest and no problemo. Yeah, you do it so dang fast. I'm used to faster games like that, so Animal Crossing felt really, really slow to me and I couldn't get into it. And it's one of those examples where it's like the kind of thing where it's like, I get it, but it's not for me. Things like the crazy back and forth loading screens for something like that, I'll definitely call a flaw though. Like, just give me the option to access my house inventory from just outside my house, like if I'm in front of it. You know, why not do that? So I don't have to go through like 4 loading screens to craft something. I guess I could put a crafting table inside, but it doesn't look nice inside.
Well, I mean, that is interesting because that's actually a pretty good example. Because a lot of people probably wouldn't have an issue with that because people like the slower nature of Animal Crossing.
Yeah, just like taking it chill and not having to worry about bum rushing objectives or anything.
But I feel like that loading screen, even though that it does make you go slow, that's not really like part of the same thing. It's not there intentionally to add to the chill vibe. It's just waiting.
Yeah, just a
Like
necessary consequence of the way the surrounding landscape was designed.
Yeah, it's like just a necessary consequence of you not wanting to put your crafting table inside Harmonia. But it's like that's not really adding to the feel of to the appeal of the game. Yet a lot of people who play the game aren't going to care because it doesn't really contradict with the appeal.
Yeah.
Like that's something that you could consider a flaw that's not really a contradiction. But what I'm thinking in my head is, okay, maybe it's not right to call it a flaw, but it has flaws. It like is flawed, but it's not straight up just bad. That doesn't really take away from the game that much, but it is like mildly annoying for some people and unnecessary.
Yeah, not really gonna vibe all that well with some. Yeah, that's the way that was for me. And there have been a few other games that, I've played over the years from, recommendations from people where it's like I finally get around to covering them and I play them and it's like, oh, I get why people like it, but I don't know. I thought that was kind of meh. I'm not gonna list them by name. I'm not trying to get canceled out here.
You should list the names and the people who suggested to whatever.
But there have been a couple games over the years on this channel that have been heralded as masterpieces that I play, and I was like, yeah, that was okay.
Yeah, Super Metroid, right?
No, not
that one.
It's not that one.
Right, Harmonia? Right? Correct? Yes.
Not that one.
No, I'm just messing with you.
I thought that one
like
doesn't exactly hold up super well for modern standards, but putting it into the context of its time was a very fascinating experience and really interesting to see just how impactful it would have been for that kind of time. I thought it was a very interesting experience from that perspective, and I enjoyed it.
I have to kill you now. I hope you know that.
What? What I say? That it doesn't hold up today?
You just criticized one of my favorite games. Yeah. Yeah. I actually do think it holds up pretty well today, but there are some things about it that are not that great. Like it feels clunky at first. Like on a first playthrough, before you really know how to move around fluidly, it feels very, very clunky. Like the item system where you have to press select to get to the specific item you want, and if you go one over, you have to go all the way back around in the middle of a battle. Like, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, it's a little bit funky there.
A little bit, but I don't know. What do you think about that? The idea that
I think that's a flaw. Yeah. The topic of this video.
Okay, buddy. Like, what do you think about what I was saying earlier about things being flawed in certain ways, but not just being actual flaws? You think that kind of gets to the bottom of why some people will like certain things and other people won't, because it's just aspects that are flawed, and those aspects are going to annoy some people, but not annoy others.
I'm going to use Pokemon Scarlet and Violet as an example here. One of the big criticisms of that game, and one that I did bring up in the video essay, was the customization. The previous games that had customization, apart from BDSP, would let you change out individual outfit pieces to make your trainer look basically however you want it to look. Whereas in Scarlet and Violet, since it was super school themed, your jacket can only be one of 4 tops, each of which is a different type of school uniform, and your pants are always the same. You can't change your pants no matter what. Those are always set in stone. So only 4 options for top and set in stone for bottom. And it's based on your game version. It's going to be orange for Scarlet and it's going to be purple for Violet. So how you look is determined by which game you decide to buy. But
okay.
What's something that's really strange about that, though, is the school in the game. You go there for like 5 to 10 minutes just to introduce it around the beginning of the game. And then the school director tells everyone, screw off, the project is the treasure hunt, go out into the world and find your treasure. And then you never have to return to the school again if you don't want to. There's a single story event that goes on there later, very briefly. But you otherwise never have to come back to the school again, but you're still forced to wear this. I feel like if it was a video game that was completely school-based. It was a video
game, which it's not.
If you're playing a game that was completely out of school, let's say you're playing Bully or something like that, then it might make sense to have the school uniform part of your outfit. be required and still be able to customize those other individual outfit pieces. Like, if it was a game where you actually spent the entire game at the school, then it might make a little bit more sense, and I could see people being a little bit more divided about that. Since the game wasn't actually super school themed, it's like, what's the point? But in the hypothetical where it was, then I could see that being a thing where it'd be a lot more debatable of like, is that a flaw then, forcing you to wear a school uniform if you are going to be at this school at all times? You know, in the hypothetical universe, that's the game that Scarlet and Violet was.
Well, in that scenario, I think it'd be fine. But since you're not in the school most of the time, that seems kind of weird.
Yeah, it is.
But I feel like Persona kind of solved that already, because there are sections where you're at the school and you're forced to have a uniform, and then sections where you're not at school and you can just wear whatever you want. So
wait, can you
could have just done that?
I know that you can go into the menu and like change outfit and stuff like that. Is that just in Mementos and Palaces, or can you actually change what you look like throughout the game?
I'm pretty sure you can change it throughout the game. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can.
Because I still haven't beaten it yet. I have a tiny smidge of royal content left, but I'm like around 250 parts into that series, and I never realized if so.
Yeah, you're way ahead of me, sadly. I don't know if I'll ever catch up, even though you have stopped playing, but so have I, so whatever.
Probably. I could probably finish it in like 1 or 2 streams, but now Tears of the British is coming out tomorrow at the time of recording
Tears
this. So.
of the British?
Yeah,
what?
Have you not heard that?
No, what?
It's because when they revealed the title for Tears of the Kingdom, when they were doing like the live stream, they decided to live stream it everywhere except for England, where it would just be posted as a recording afterwards, because I thought that it might be offensive to live stream it because the Queen had just passed away.
Tears of the... Oh my god. Oh my god. That's so funny.
And they thought
That's
it'd be
fucked up.
insensitive to live stream it. Perfectly
You know what?
fine.
No,
to
I actually understand that. I get that. I don't blame them for that.
So,
That's really crazy.
So, anyway, it's unrelated, but
That's fucked up. Okay,
so
not gonna let us get on track 30 times like last time.
Anyway, but yeah, interesting time to be talking about this since, you know, that releases tomorrow. Later today at the time of recording this here, actually, it's 4 p.m. local time here, and it releases at 10 p.m. here, because apparently that's midnight Eastern time, so they can just release it the day before here as long as it's midnight Eastern time, so...
Yeah, in our real time zone, it's actually 5 p.m. In fake time zones, it might be 4 p.m., but in real time zones, nah, bro.
I see how it is. One note about that as well. I don't know if this is going to be something worth having like a full-on discussion on, but something that is worth noting, I feel like, to follow up on the discussion that we had last time about review scores, is I already feel like there's probably going to be a lot of reviewers that are going to be afraid of being perfectly honest in their reviews of Tears of the Kingdom, because that's a game that is going to get 9s and 10s across the board just for simply existing. And, you know, if you're completely honest and you rate it something lower than that, then you're going to get flack, which is, you know, something that we discussed about review scores last time. So
the same exact thing happened with the original Breath of the Wild. Yeah. Literally, anyone who said anything slightly critical just got massacred. They got torn apart.
Yeah.
Like, and
that game has flaws that are worth discussing.
Literally. And this is actually something we were thinking of making another discussion about. Nowadays, you see so many videos critiquing Breath of the Wild because the hype has kind of died down, and it's like, now you're allowed to critique it. Now that you're actually allowed to say negative things about it, now all the negativity is coming out of woodworks all at once.
And there are
seems like
some
it's overwhelmingly negative.
When it first came out, it was like this mentality of, you know, everything is perfect, everything's amazing. Now I do see aspects of it that do seem to have the general mentality of, you know, that's not that great. An example of that is weapon durability, for example, where nobody really mentioned it all that much when it first came out. But now, I feel like I see like a greater resurgence of the mentality of, weapon durability kind of sucked. You know, you get a cool weapon and then you can only use it like once.
We're literally just not allowed to talk about that. Like, you would get shut down by all Zelda fans anytime you brought that up, ever.
Mm.
And it's like it was the same thing with the music. Like anytime we were talking about this, anytime anyone criticized the music, oh, so you want the Ocarina of Time bombastic adventure theme?
No,
like
just a
no. I just want better music. That's it.
Want something atmosphere, kind of like Octopath Traveler I had mentioned as an example before we started this recording.
Yeah, or Minecraft.
I love Minecraft music. It's so good, so relaxing.
It's really good. Or Metroid is another one. Or hell, even other Zelda games. I don't know why we're talking. I think we said we weren't going to do this. Why are we talking about Breath of the Wild? Like, this always happens. You can't escape this game.
And you couldn't live with yourselves, and where did that bring you? Back to me. Whatever
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Hey, no, you said it right.
But yeah, I'm sure that with Tears of the Kingdom coming out, there's probably going to be... I'm sure that there will be, like, a fair amount of flaws with that game, as there is with, you know, pretty much any video game to ever exist. And stuff that is worth discussing and critiquing.
You know, about that. So, I never told you about this. You know, I've been writing reviews on my videos that are gonna take 3,000 years to come out.
Yeah.
I started writing a Breath of the Wild review some years ago, back when I first played it, and I recently decided, you know what, I'm gonna finish writing it, because it's never gonna be a video now. Tears of the Kingdom is coming out, it's gonna be irrelevant. But the reason I decided to finish it is because I have a little suspicion that almost all my issues with the original game are still gonna be in the sequel. So it's like I can just copy and paste if I do review the sequel.
Yeah, a lot of it could well be left in.
Like, I feel like they're not going to change weapon durability, so I can just copy and paste that whole section, put it in the new one.
Well, I believe you'll be able to fuse things, and then it gets a little bit more durability that way. Like, my stick's about to break, let's put a rock on it.
Put a rock on it. Just put some rock on it, it'll be fine. I mean, also, hopefully. I'm trying to be a little more optimistic about it, because I do think it has a ton of potential, but... I don't know. The trailers haven't really shown us much. Yeah.
Well, probably to, you know, play into hype and YouTubers that do advertising for them with, you know, these in-depth analyses about, like, what's this gonna be? What does Link's magic arm mean? Why is there the old geezer from that SpongeBob episode who didn't like chocolate as like chocolate? I remember chocolate that's in that crypt that... Okay, the thing that the guy that looked like Ganondorf in the first trailer, he looked kind of like the guy in the wheelchair in that SpongeBob episode about chocolate.
I was like, what are you talking about?
I was trying to tie it together in a way that made sense, but I mean, doing stuff like that gives them free advertising anyway, with the bazillion YouTubers that try to capitalize off of that by building off the hype train with a, you know, overanalyzing every little thing. Stuff.
Yeah.
So, literally. You know, free marketing.
30 minutes to analyze a 2-minute trailer.
Yeah. Yeah, why market when we can have them do it for us, essentially? It's actually a really smart way to handle it. I recently watched a video essay on hype behind games, and it was a really interesting watch, and it talked about how the most hype that people will have is at the promise of reward when the game is first announced, and like the lead up to it rather than actually playing it. That's a little bit distracted from the topic of flaws at this point, but just a little interesting note to shoehorn in.
Yeah, I wonder if we should cut this whole section out, just because, like, watch everything we're saying be completely outdated by tomorrow. Like, literally.
One thing I do want to ask in regards to flaws, though. Breath of the Wild I find to be a very interesting case study in terms of glitches. I love breaking that game into. That's really fun. It's a very interesting game for its glitches in the sense that when you're playing casually, you're probably very rarely, if ever, going to run into a glitch. It's going to seem like one of the most stable games you've ever played. But if you really take the time to learn that engine, it's like one of the most broken video games ever made. It's like, oh my goodness, the thing's made together with duct tape. You can do so much stuff. Would something like that be considered a flaw, do you think?
Well, I think you set that up perfectly, because I think if it's something that you can play normally and never run into any issues, then it's fine. Yeah. Especially if the flaws are actually fun. Like, you clearly love cheating. I mean, using glitches and stuff. you clearly love doing that, and so does so many other people, like speedrunners. So if it's like, it only adds to the game, if anything.
Yeah, and it doesn't take away anything from the casual player base. And it only adds to those that take the time to really learn it. And
it's like I was saying with Arkham games earlier, like if you have to go out of your way to find a flaw and it's not something you would ever encounter normally, it's not that, it's not really a big deal.
Yeah.
At all. I don't really consider that a flaw necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something kind of hidden away like that, like the glitches in Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I feel like in the case of something like Breath of the Wild is, in my opinion, the perfect example of video game glitches done right, where it's like, you know, playing casually, it seems super stable, no problemo. Those that want to break it can break it. It is my favorite video game for the glitches, just because there's so much cool stuff that you can do with the glitches, but it's never going to interfere with a normal gameplay experience. Take an example of games where glitches are going to interfere in the normal gameplay experience. Examples of that being things like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Cyberpunk 2077 on launch, Last of Us Part 1 on PC. Apparently the PS5 version is just fine. I recently played the PC version when it came out, and my god, what a mess. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, which apparently recently got launched on the Switch as well, somehow.
Oh yeah, the Switch is gonna explode playing that. Nintendo is just putting out pipe bombs in everyone's house. That's crazy.
Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach on the Switch, the pipe bomb. Apparently, from what I've seen of it, it actually seems to run like pretty decently well, maybe only slightly worse than other platforms.
Well, for the sake of the joke, whenever someone pirates Tears of the Kingdom, Nintendo's gonna automatically download Five Nights at Freddy's on their Security Breach. Then it's gonna explode.
See how much it breaks it. Yeah.
But yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say in regards to glitches and stuff. This could kind of segue into the next related topic if we wanted it to. If you have any other thoughts there about that before I kind of
you just
segue with this.
completely ruined the potential segue. So
well, no, I'm gonna segue now anyway.
Okay.
When I was playing The Last of Us Part 1, it was my first time ever playing The Last of Us. It was a game that I had long heard was, you know, a super amazing masterpiece. Everyone has to experience it. And when I was doing my review at the end, since I always do like my review during the credits, I was kind of wondering what balance to strike in my review, and also tying it back to the last video there. I almost said video essay, the last podcast. I wouldn't quite be sure what kind of score to give it, because it's like the game itself, I actually really liked and thought was really good. But that version of the game, my god, it was so awful. Like, they clearly rushed it out to capitalize off of the success of the show having come out recently. And now that they had all these new established fans through that, they wanted to release the PC port shortly after. And so they rushed it out, like, so much faster than they should have, using a studio that is infamous for its terrible PC ports. And, my goodness, it was a bit of a mess. You'd, be going through sections, and the game basically never had frame drops that performed just fine for me. Instead, the game would just completely freeze and give me a please wait in the middle of the screen, and I would have to wait anywhere from like a minute to... Early on, it was pretty long, anywhere from a minute to 10 minutes in the beginning. Later on, it was probably only a minute or two. But yeah, it would just show please wait in the center of the screen, no loading indicator, game completely frozen, and then when it was done, it would just unpause, and I'd get to keep playing stuff. That was pretty strange. Lighting would bug out a lot of the time. I showed you the video. I showed you the video just
work
before.
In this game?
Not really. I showed you the video just before starting this recording of that one part where I entered that room and it was like getting flashbanged. Like it
flashbanged so by a rainbow.
Bright. I literally couldn't see anything, and that final level was so hard. Like going through the rave room, just because it was so hard to tell what was going on when everything was becoming, you know, all this flashy glow. It was so weird. Characters would bug out sometimes. Beginning of the game, this one character was leading me along, and she got like sucked into this mailbox and T-posed, this newspaper box. There were cutscenes where the characters' faces would be so low detail, like their hair at least, their facial hair and their hair would be so low detail that they look like Lego figures. And it was so weird. In the cutscenes, when it went from one shot to another, it felt like 50-50 chance they were gonna look like Lego figures or they were gonna look like high detail realistic.
Lego figures, that's not what I expected you to say, of all things. Like, I'm just
So,
picturing that, like an emotional scene in The Last of Us, and they turn into a Lego figure. Like,
well,
what?
it's when they were driving in the truck in this one section, and in one shot they'd be looking like Lego figures, and then immediate next shot it's like they're back to super realistic, looking amazing and stuff like that. And the next shot they're back to looking like Lego figures again, and it's so weird. But it makes me
That
wonder.
sounds hilarious.
And,
Not very fun, but hilarious.
those are clearly flaws, but the general overall game I thought was really good and I really liked. But that version of the game was just so flawed and so garbage. Like, especially in some of those super bright sections, it was borderline unplayable. I could barely tell what was going on in some of them. Anyone that has photosensitivity, I would not recommend that game to, at least in its current state. At least, the current state of the PC version apparently works fine on PS5 from what people tell me, but the PC version, my goodness.
Exactly, so I would say then that is a flawed version of that game. Not necessarily a flawed game, but that version is very messed up.
Yeah, so it probably wouldn't be fair to say that The Last of Us in general is like such a flawed, awful video game or anything like that. But it is fair enough to say then that Last of Us Part 1 on PC is an extremely flawed game.
Yeah, I feel like the word flaw is starting to lose all meaning. We're saying it so much.
Yeah, it's becoming what the word cope is on the internet. No one even knows what it means anymore.
Cringe.
Yeah, everyone just uses it. Lost all.
Yeah, but I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, the game was really good. That version of the game, I don't think I could recommend it to anyone in its current state, unless they just want to laugh at the glitches. It was pretty funny, not gonna lie.
People do with Sonic games.
Yeah, some people definitely do it with that. Would it then be a flaw for the people that get enjoyment laughing out of it, if, that's how they find their joy?
Yes, I think it still would be.
Okay.
Well, because that's an interesting point, because it's like, most people aren't going to enjoy that. Well, no, they'll enjoy it, but not for the reasons that the devs intended.
Yeah,
because if we're saying that something's not a flaw if it's intended, this stuff is clearly not intended. So
yeah, it might be the kind of thing where it's like momentary enjoyment at like the poor quality of the game, but then as you keep playing, it's like you're not laughing at it anymore. Now it just sucks. Like in that in the final level of the DLC of Last of Us Part 1 there, which I played like just a couple days ago and finally finished off. The final level, I start in this one center area. There's guys coming at me from the center and from the left and right directions that I can go. I have to choose one direction to go down and hopefully not die. And one of the directions that felt a little bit safer was the green room, which was just a room covered in green. And when my character went in there, she would turn green. When the enemies, when they went in there, they would turn green. So it became kind of hard to see things. And then the room above was all sorts of rainbow colors. I called it the rave room. And it was kind of hard to tell what the hell was going on in there. As funny as it looked. So it's like at the beginning I was laughing at it, but by the time that I got to attempting that level over and over and over again, wasn't even reacting to it anymore. I was just playing it like super serious, try-hard gamer mode, reacting as if there was nothing wrong with it at all. But, making things a lot more difficult because I was trying to tell what the hell was going on in there when everything was rainbow. So I feel like stuff like that gave me enjoyment at the beginning of laughing at how awfully optimized that game was. But as it went on, and it just made my experience harder, it just made things a bit more miserable.
I feel like you'd have to look at the whole experience, because it makes you laugh at first, but is it really that enjoyable for the whole entire experience, or?
Yeah, it might have been the cause of a couple deaths. If I want to be a John here, blame my loss on some other things.
A John.
Yeah.
That's an old. I've never heard someone call themselves a John in so long. That's such an old way to say it.
Back in my day.
Back in your day. I mean, you did originally come from the birthplace of the term, so.
The land of Texas.
Exactly. Well, as you're talking about that made me think of something else. You say something is a flaw if it's completely unintended but still fun. Because remember earlier we said that if the devs intended it and the fans want it, is it a flaw? And in this case, the devs didn't intend it. It's like kind of the opposite. People still enjoy it. The example I would use is like Super Smash Bros. Melee. There's a lot of stuff you can do in that game that's clearly not intended at all, but people love it. So it's like, is it a flaw then?
For a long time, there were a lot of people that liked wobbling just because it made an otherwise very meh character of Ice Climbers actually have like a fighting shot at higher level and actually had, chance to compete and stuff like that. I've heard that a lot of places lately in more recent history have actually banned wobbling just because people eventually came to the verdict that it made the game boring just because it, it's boring straight up.
Ice Climbers, I think, is the most boring character in the game.
So, some people saw it as a pro for a while, which is like, hey, Ice Climbers can have a fighting shot. And then Ice Climbers had a fighting shot for a long time and made the game like slow and boring and just like you get grabbed, you die. It's like, ugh, even if they're still not the best character in the game, it's just so annoying that, it later got seen as a flaw. And that kind of ties back into what you were saying about Breath of the Wild earlier about a lot of people seeing it at the beginning of like, oh, amazing, everything is great. And then as time went on, stuff is starting to come out of the woodwork of, was stuff like this really all that great? That was kind of the case with Ices. When it comes to unintentional design, I think that would mostly be the case with things like glitches, because usually if something's in the game, it's going to be intentional. Even if it was unintentional during development and was intentionally left in later. Like the Minecraft Creeper, when Notch like messed up the axes for the pig, saw what it created and was like, I'm gonna make this into a thing, Stuff like that where it was a mistake but got turned into something that was shipped. I don't know how many unintentional things that aren't glitches are really going to be left in games. I guess maybe oversights. There's always, like, exploits and stuff that you could potentially do that the developers wouldn't have anticipated that aren't necessarily glitches, like Breath of the Wild launching yourself with bombs, bomb impact launches. It's not really a glitch per se, but,
In Melee, I feel like there's not a lot of stuff that's straight up glitches. A lot of it are exploits, but by unintentional stuff, I mean, there's a lot of aspects of that game that are like clearly unfinished. Like there's some characters whose moves, like in the data, there's like supposed to be, it's Samus, and like she's supposed to have one more hit at the end of her forward air, and that last hit exists in the data, but they didn't actually put it in the game. So like that's a mistake, and maybe it's a bad example, but that's the kind of thing where it's like it's a mistake, but people enjoy it. It's like, even though they didn't mean for it to end up that way, people still like it. That might be a bad example because people don't really like Samus not having her forward air, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. Like that is a genuine mistake there. So there's a lot of stuff like that in Melee where they genuinely messed up, but people actually like, hey, this is actually still really fun though. I'm kind of glad you messed this up.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the goal of a video game is to, drive sales, have player enjoyment, which usually go hand in hand in most cases. A lot of times, you can just put out whatever, and as long as you market it well, then you're going to have good sales. Best example of that being Pokemon Scarlet and Violet.
Pokemon Scarlet and Violet talk.
But generally, you want to be making a good play experience, which therefore leads to higher sales and, everyone just having a good time with it and stuff. So even if it's unintentional, if it does result in a positive play experience, then it's like, it was a strange way to do it, but task failed successfully.
Yeah, I would agree that as long as it's not, my thought process is, if it doesn't contradict any of the other aspects of the game, then it's fine. If it's not like some unintentional glitch or something that makes it like impossible to jump or something, like it doesn't, as long as it doesn't mess with what is intended, then I think it's fine. But the thing is, doesn't that kind of contradict what we were saying earlier, where if something is intended and it's not a flaw, so if it's not intended, wouldn't that automatically kind of make it a flaw just by default?
I don't understand.
Well, because earlier the whole start of the conversation was in Shinigami Tensei Nocturne. I was saying that the devs, a lot of the things I didn't like, the devs actually put there intentionally. Like, I may not like it, but it's there. I think I
see what you're saying. So it might still be like a flaw for you personally, but generally overall, it's probably not a flaw. Unless maybe you can identify some key game design principle that it goes against.
Well, my thing is, I do think it is quote unquote objectively a flaw. I do think it goes against game design principles, some aspects of that game, but like the devs knew that. They were doing it fully aware intentionally still. So it's like, is that a flaw at that point if you're breaking the rules and making it worse intentionally because it's what the fans want?
I guess it depends on what you constitute as worse. Some games will try things that other games either haven't tried at all or have, not really dabbled in all that much and break normal game design principles. The most famous example of that is probably Undertale. That game was famous for, going against the norm and doing things like that and, breaking normal principles and stuff like that. And, people got an unexpected experience through that and, that game got super popular.
I guess a better example of what I'm talking about, I don't know if you've heard of like Kaizo Mario levels or like rage games like what is it, Cat Mario? Have you heard of something like that?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Well, like that game is extremely intentionally poorly designed and like frustrating, but like that's the point. Could you say that's a bad game if it's made that way intentionally?
I mean, if it's achieving the goal that it set out to do, then hey,
that's not a flaw, right? But if a game is not achieving its goal, isn't that a flaw? Like Melee, because okay, so we just said if a game is achieving its goal, then it's fine. But well, no, because Melee's goal is to be entertaining, right? It does do that. Okay, all right. I guess that works. As long as it achieves its goal, it's fine.
One game that this is making me think of is a game that created a very interesting system with its AI, but it kind of went under the radar because players didn't know that it was there. Don't quote me on any of this stuff because I haven't played it myself. It was discussed in my game AI lectures, but it was a game called Weird West. And in Weird West, the story was designed in such a way that the AI would write to fix or change things based on what happens. So let's say you're being guided along by this one NPC that's showing you the way, but then you shoot them in the head, and then, the story's gonna need to find some way to adapt, and then, the AI starts working its magic, and maybe it'll find someone else to guide you, or maybe it'll take you down some other line or something like that. Take you on a different unexpected journey in that case. And the game went very under the radar. Not a lot of people really got it because people didn't try to deviate from the norm. They just went the way the game told them to go, and they didn't even realize that these AI systems were in place. Would that then be a flaw, even if it is like a really cool design system? If people just didn't even realize it was there, that they should take advantage of it and just treat it like any other game.
Be a flaw. Well, this actually is like kind of a perfect segue into the next thing I want to talk about, because whether or not that's a flaw, I think depends on developer intention. Like, are you supposed to find it naturally, or are you supposed to actually dig deeper in order to find it? Like, you can't really know stuff like that unless you know exactly what the developers intended. And it's kind of remarkably tough to know that when devs usually don't tell you anything. So what I wanted to say next was like, how can we really determine a flaw based on developer intention if we usually just don't know developer intention? It's not a reliable way to do it.
Yeah, the game needs an effective way of teaching its rules to the player. I feel like games that don't, that could be counted as a flaw. One of the examples of that was in the Legends Arceus video essay, where, I'm like 2 hours into the game, or something like that. I just want to stop these tutorials already, because the tutorials in that game last a long, long time. It's like, okay, I'm so done with this. Let me just get out there and experience this game properly a little bit. And as the tutorials are wrapping up in the Galaxy Team HQ, there's this guy that's standing in the hall that's like, oh, would you like to know about storage? Are you running out of space in your satchel? Come talk to me. Pretty much. Find yourself unable to pick up the materials you come across, satchel always seeming full? Well, I've got the deal for you! If my name isn't Spamton! If that sounds like you, it'd be wise to lend me your ear for a moment and hear what I have to say. I can make you into a big shot. Freaking, I can figure it out. Leave me alone. I'm sure it's literally just go to like the box in my home and then freaking sort out my inventory. There's no way it's more complicated than that. So I don't need to hear it. So I was like, I'm so done with tutorials. I want to go play the game. I've seen the storage boxes around the world already. I can reason out how they work. And I left, and I started, you know, playing the game and stuff like that. And, you know, my inventory would be filling up pretty quickly. I needed to use the storage boxes, like, very frequently because I was constantly finding that I couldn't pick up more items because, you know, my satchel kept getting full. And I only found out by YouTube comments that I could go back to that guy in the hall, and what he does is he is not a tutorial on storage. He is actually someone that you pay to expand your inventory.
So you just assumed it was a tutorial because it was framed that way.
Yeah, that's the way that it was framed. And, you know, I would have, if it wasn't for YouTube comments letting me know, I probably would have gone through my whole adventure not knowing and been so frustrated with that the entire time. But, you know, it was just because I was told, like, hey, go talk to him, that I went and talked to him, and it's like, huh, I kind of wish the game had told me about this. So I brought that up in the Legends Arceus video essay, and there was a lot of people who treated it as, because they went and talked to him immediately when he said, and then they learned through that, they treated it like it must have been, like, super obvious and evident to everybody. And I've received a lot of comments on that video faulting me for not understanding. Being like, oh, you're just dumb for not knowing. He said that he knew what to do.
Yeah, you don't talk to every single NPC at all times. You're dumb.
Yeah, there was a lot of people putting the blame on me. Whereas it's like, the burden should be on the developer to make sure that the rules are being accurately communicated. It's not like I was going out of my way to avoid the rules or anything like that. He just said, like, hey, you want to learn about storage? Are you running out of space in your satchel? Talk to me. It's like, yeah, I've seen the storage boxes. I've played enough video games. I know how they work. I can move on. If he had said something like, hey, by the way, you can come to me and pay me if you want to expand your satchel, then I would have known. And that's what he tells you when you go up and talk to him. But when he calls out to you in the hall, he just says, talk to me if you're worried about your satchel getting full, or whatever the heck he said.
Well, to be fair, the first part of it kind of ruins it, but him saying talk to me if you're worried about your satchel getting full is kind of a hint that, you know, if you're running out of space, you can talk to him. But like the first part, want to learn about storage? Yeah, that does kind of make it seem like it's going to be a tutorial.
I don't remember exactly what it was. That's, you know, off my memory from like a year ago. So I don't remember exactly what he said. It was something about storage, I'm fairly certain. And then it was, your satchel getting full, talk to me. And it's like, yeah, I've seen the storage boxes. I know I can deposit stuff in there that I don't have to hold everything in my pocket until the end of time. But no, that's not what it was about.
Getting full. Okay, no, yeah, you're right. I think you're right.
So, cases like that where you don't accurately portray your rules to your player, I would definitely count as a flaw. But then, you know, other people in YouTube comments who it was super evident to them and therefore it should be super evident to you wouldn't see it as a flaw.
Yeah, that happens a lot where they try to use their subjective experience to say, hey, this is just how it is. And it's like,
yeah, how can you not realize? It's so obvious.
You not know everything.
So evident.
Dark Souls players do that a lot, which is annoying.
Oh yeah.
You didn't have my exact experience.
You're using magic? You're attacking with more than your fists?
Yeah, you're apparently not allowed to use magic. Right.
Yeah.
Although you do have a history of cheating, so I can kind of understand.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not a Minecraft speedrunner.
But I don't think we really answered the question of what if you don't know the developer's intent? Like, how did you approach it then?
Well, I mean, that kind of was an example of not knowing what the developers intended with Mr. Satchel Guy.
I think their intent was for you to learn. What was it that he did? He expanded your storage?
He expanded your satchel, like your...
Expanded your satchel?
So your inventory moving around. Your storage box is infinite, I think. But your actual moving around the world inventory is satchel.
I think they wanted you to learn how to expand your satchel, and they didn't really do a great job at that.
Yeah, didn't do a good job of sharing that information.
Yeah, share the information. Better way to phrase it. So, I mean, I think we can figure out what their intent was there. It's like, what if you can't?
Yeah, like you're just a bit confused. That was one of the things that we discussed a bit in my game design class that was done on tabletop games. Throughout that semester, we made 3 different tabletop games just in tabletop sim because it was in the middle of COVID at the time. And we would do extensive playtesting with other groups. And we, as the designers of our own game, would not explain the rules to them or anything. We would just give them the rule sheet that we wrote up that people would be getting, you know, when they go to play it on their own. Because realistically, people that go to play a game aren't going to have the developers watching over their shoulder. Well, I mean, at least not literally, well, with all the data that gets shared nowadays. At least not in the literal sense then, but, So, you need to make sure that with just the rules and just the game in front of them, the players can understand how your game works, as opposed to you being there and explaining it. And then you would wait a little bit and watch them start playing it out, see if they do it right, see if they do it wrong, and if they're doing it wrong, why are they doing it wrong, and what can you adjust in your rules to make it a bit more clear and get a better play experience. Or if they get a better play experience like that, then just adjust your rules to be their version. You know? That's what you can always do, too.
Or at least give them the option to do that.
Well, yeah, you can change your game whenever, if you really want. It's not like that would happen all that often, but, you know, some people would make suggestions and stuff like that, and it'd be like, oh, that's a good idea. But, you know, it wasn't you. We usually wouldn't change things because someone did something wrong, and then we realized that that was better.
Yeah, you have to go by what most people are doing. But, yeah, I feel like when it comes to developer intent, I don't know if this really works, but my mindset is just like, well, okay, it doesn't really matter why something is the way it is. It only matters that it is that way. Like, I guess what you were saying with the NPC.
You'll forget the work, but, you know, the end product will last forever. I think. Or maybe I'm off course there.
I don't even know what you meant by that.
Just kind of like, you were saying that the reason why things are doesn't matter, just the way things is what matters. So, for example, working on the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet video essay for the past 7 months, it's like now the work that went into that and the build-up and progress doesn't really matter. All that matters is the final video that was put out. Kind of like with game development, where it might not matter the reason why things are the way that they are. All that matters is this is the way that it is and what people are receiving. That's what you meant.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just that, I guess what you were saying with the NPC, and I'm just going to use him as an example. I don't know if this is really accurate. If he's like unclear, if what he's there to do is unclear, just as an example, it doesn't really matter why he's unclear or what the developers intended. The fact of the matter is that he's unclear.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he's there to do. That's what matters to me as the player.
Yeah.
So whatever the devs intended is irrelevant because I'm not getting the most out of this situation.
Yeah.
That's sort of what matters. But then I feel like it kind of falls back into subjectivity because it's like, well, maybe other people will get the most out of it. Like I can't just go by just my experience. So I guess I'd have to go by what my objective thought process is and other people's experience. Like try to look at it objectively.
Luckily, I have had other comments telling me, oh my goodness, finally someone mentioned Satchel Guy. I had no idea either. So
hopefully they're not scared to comment because all the people berating you.
So yeah, I'm far from the only one. It did seem like there was a decent smidge of players that ran into that issue. That's the case. Didn't realize until later on that it's a thing that they could do.
I mean, I think the example I have here is like a level that's bad. I don't know why this is my example. But like say a level sucks because the devs, they didn't have time to finish it. Like, okay, I mean, it's a shame, but me as the player, like it's not that I don't care, but like that's not really relevant. The fact is that the level sucks. That's what immediately matters to me. So it's like developer intent, you can take that into account, but I don't feel like that should really shape your opinion of what's a flaw and what's not. Because then games like what's a rushed game like Mario Sunshine or even Melee, I guess we just can't say those games have flaws then because they're rushed because the developers have problems with it. It's like,
oh, no. You would not believe how often on my Pokemon essays I get comments saying, oh, but these games were rushed, they were on time constraints, so it's whatever the state that they came out in. You know, it's excusable. Like, you have to consider that, you know, Game Freak is still learning 3D when it's been a decade now. They're still learning 3D. You gotta give them some breathing room. They're still struggling. They're still learning. They also I've seen a lot that are like, these are the first times that Game Freak has made home console games. They're still learning how a home console works. You gotta give them some slack.
No, it is not. They've made several, haven't they? Made at least 3.
Yeah.
Stadium, and the Gale of Darkness, and what is the other one? Coliseum.
Game Freak didn't make those.
The Game Freak didn't make any of those?
I don't know who made Stadium. I don't remember. But Coliseum and Gale of Darkness were made by Genius Sonority, which is a team that didn't even know what Pokemon was before they were commissioned to make that project. Commission probably isn't the right word.
I'm just a liar then. Ignore me.
Played Coliseum for the first time earlier this year. Thought it was interesting. But it definitely has its fair share of flaws. I know it's blasphemous to say.
How dare you?
I know it's blasphemous.
I'm just kidding. I haven't played that game in like 15 years. Well, maybe not that long, but in a long time.
But yeah, anyway, there is definitely a lot of games that end up coming out very rushed and unfinished, and, you know, people will just be like, oh, obviously it was rushed, so we have to give them some slack. I also feel like it differs based on the fan base. Like, I see that a lot with Pokemon, but when Last of Us Part 1 came out on PC, there was a lot of people that were like, what is with all these negative reviews? What the heck is going on with that? You know, just, you know, to praise the game itself. But anyone that was reviewing that version of the game, like Part 1 on PC, it feels like everyone was just like, yeah, this is rushed garbage.
I mean, there's really no defending that. Like, that rave room was crazy.
It's really funny, though.
Especially funny to me because I'm not playing.
Yeah, it's probably a lot more enjoyable from the viewing experience rather than, you know, doing your first ever playthrough on the hardest difficulty where you get like 2 to 3 shot and you have no HUD. And you're dealing with that in addition.
Why would you play on the hardest difficulty? You're not a gamer. What are you doing? You don't game. What are you talking about?
What you talking about? But yeah, I definitely feel like games being rushed is definitely... I won't say that game is being rushed is itself a flaw, but it can be a cause of creating many flaws within the game. And it shouldn't be excused because it was rushed.
Yeah, exactly. My thing is, being rushed is not an excuse for the flaws. Yeah. Like, the whole thing is just like, okay, we don't know their intent, but if it's flawed, then it's flawed. Just kind of the end of it.
When it comes to the rush defense that I see with things like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, a lot of people will make the defense of it's rushed because they need to balance it with things like the merchandise, the anime, the TCG, the movies, all the things, since it's, you know, such a massive multimedia brand as the highest grossing media IP. And, you know, it is true that they did rush it because, well, most likely, because they wanted to balance it alongside all these other things that they'd be generating revenue on. But that doesn't change the fact that the game itself came out as this half-baked mess, you know? And it shouldn't be excused as just a half-baked mess just because it needed to come out in that state to coincide with the bazillion other things that they wanted to do.
Yeah, you know? That's on them for making that mistake. Still very much a flaw. But I guess really the last thing I wanted to mention is, because we were talking about earlier, if FIFA and COD are automatically... Oh wait, what was I saying?
Automatically good because of high sales and lots of people playing them. Or...
Not even just that, but because so many more people think that they're good. So it's like, because we were saying earlier that...
quantity.
Yeah, like, if most people like something, can you still call it a flaw? We said no, if most people like it, then it's fine. But then it's like, these games, most people like these games, so how can we say that they're flawed?
I'd say from the developer / producer / publisher, whatever developer side, it's good then, because you want sales, you want people to like your game, and if that's what you're achieving, then great. But from a raw player experience standpoint, just straight up the game that's being received, it can still be interpreted as a flaw. Like, if we're looking at something like, you know, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, 10 million units in 3 days, and now over 20 million, I believe. You know, from the sake of, you know, doing good marketing and getting people behind it, game did great. Game did amazing. You know, from the perspective.
Most people enjoy those games, like most people that you see.
I see a very drastic divide. You know, I see a lot of people split. You look at the Google reviews, for example, and it's like a bazillion ones, a bazillion fives, like we discussed the last time.
Well,
you know,
do at least 51% of people enjoy it? So that's technically most people.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, if that is the case, if that's true, then from the development standpoint, then that would be, well, I guess it'd be relatively good, because you still want, you know, greater number of people to like your game than not. If your goal is at least 51% of people to like your game, then, you know, I feel like that's not a good goal to have. You should shoot for, you know, most people that play actually enjoying your game, you know. At least to enjoy your game well enough to buy the next one in case of, like, multimedia, things like that. I would say.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say it's a bad game, but it's not as good as some others.
What, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet?
Yeah.
No, I'd say it's a bad game. I just say from the perspective of, like, the company's perspective. Great game, amazing. It sold so much for them, it did, you know, gave them so much money. So from their perspective, with that being their goal, it's great, you know? From the actual player side perspective.
Like, overall, considering all the perspectives. And I mean, the game is still technically good because most people enjoy it and it sold well. How can that be bad? Also, it's not as good as a lot of other games because it does have a lot of flaws.
I feel like a lot of people also saw it as good just from the perspective of it being a different Pokemon game. Whenever people praise Pokemon games lately, it's always, this is a good Pokemon game, this is an amazing Pokemon game. It's never, this is a good video game, you know?
It's like tough to get a grasp on.
And I would say that something's still flawed, even if it's better by comparison to other things within its bubble. If it's still not as great shaping up to things generally around, then I'd still say that that's flawed. One thing that I've noticed here and there in the comments of my Scarlet and Violet video essay is the first section, the first chapter, talk about like pre-order bonuses, early buying bonuses, stuff like that. I call that out as, you know, not a super great practice, especially considering if you want to 100% the game, you need a backpack that was exclusive to pre-ordering from Pokemon Center, which is pretty silly there. But, you know, I called that out, and I've received a decent few comments that say that I shouldn't be criticizing that because everybody does it nowadays. Do you feel like something bad getting normalized makes it not bad anymore? No longer flaw. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, Harmonia. What do you think? Do you think if normalizing murder, if you normalize murder, does that mean it's okay now? I don't know.
Yeah, I might have to think on that one a little bit. I don't know.
No, but I also guess you could say that if most people liked it, then it's not bad. But the thing is, I don't think most people like it.
What, things like pre-order bonuses? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of like an evil that's put up with nowadays.
Not me. I'm still not buying that shit.
Well, I mean, like, in general, within the industry of...
I mean, you kind of have to because you're covering stuff. I don't. Well, I'm not.
You don't need to get them algorithm brownie points like I do of covering things day one?
Nope. For the brownie points.
Yeah, I'm gonna be playing Tears of the Kingdom so late tonight and absolutely destroying my sleep so I can get my day one stuff out.
Oh my god. Let me know. Well, actually, don't let me know anything. What am I talking about? I'm gonna play myself.
You can fuse a stick with a rock.
Yeah, you know, your arm got cut off? Just put some rock on it. It'll be fine.
I mean, he does put something on his arm with his crazy magic arm. But anyway. Yeah, I feel like with things like pre-order bonuses, there's so many things that just got normalized within the industry that people just eventually accepted and, you know, therefore don't, you know, cause as much of an uproar about. Maybe I won't say still don't see as flaws, but I will just say accepted, put up with, just see it as the way things are. This was something that I talked about a little bit in my video essays talking about Nintendo's stance on their online service, where at first, when the Switch first came out, online was still free at that point, but they announced that later down the line, we're going to make it paid. So people were like, oh, that's pretty sucky. What the heck? We didn't have to pay for it before. Why now? But then it came out like September or something of the Switch launch year. I don't quite exactly remember. And, people have to start paying for online. And, during the lead up, it started to get a little bit more accepted of like, yep, this is coming. We've been anticipating it for a little while. Then the day actually comes in. It's like, yeah, this is, that kind of sucks. Well, and, some people causing a bit of an uproar. And then over time, it got normalized. And, people grew to accept it. And Nintendo would also inflate the value of their online disservice with things like NES games, for example. And,
well, with Nintendo Switch Online, I feel like them having a paid service isn't that bad. I don't think that's a flaw. I think the fact that it was free at first, and then they're just like, oh, we're just going to suddenly make it paid now. All the things that were free are just paid now.
Well, I think
it's stupid.
Well, I think it's a flaw that their online service barely works, and that they inflate the price using their classic games that have been out for 30 to 40 years.
That's exactly what I was going to get into next. I think the fact that they make it paid and it's not even what you're paying for is stupid.
But anyway, the main thing that I wanted to say about like normalizing things was not paid, but here's the news that you have to pay. Sucks, but it gets normalized. You have to pay now. Sucks, but then they let time go on and it gets normalized. Then they announced that, hey, N64 and, Sega Genesis games are coming, but it's an additional expansion pass that you have to pay more for if you want to rent these games, not even own them at that point.
Terrible.
And then people are like, man, this sucks. But then it gets normalized. They give it time. And now they recently announced, I don't even know if it's live. I never got the expansion. I have no intention of getting it, so I don't even know if it's up and available right now. But they announced that Game Boy Advance games are coming to Nintendo Switch, but only if you shell out for the expansion. And once again, it's like, man, that sucks. But then they let time go on. It gets normalized. People accept it. And then, it's basically like Nintendo asking you to take like a single step at a time every 6 months to a year. And by asking you to take those like small increments of steps, you don't ever bother to look back and see all the steps that you took from like the starting point to see how truly sucky it is overall. You just complain about that one singular step that's sucky in the now, and then, accept all the other flaws and suckiness. It gets normalized.
Yeah, it's frog boiling in water, exactly.
I've never heard that analogy before.
What?
No.
It's exactly what you're describing. It's like a thing where there's a frog in water, and every so often you turn up the heat. It's like, well, it's on like a stove or something, water in like a pot, and every so often you turn up the heat just a little bit, and then it gets used to it, and you turn up the heat a little bit more, and it gets used to it, and you turn up the heat a little bit more, and the frog doesn't really notice that big of a change. It's just these small changes every so often, and before the frog even knows it, it's getting boiled alive. It's pretty much this.
First time hearing that analogy.
It's a crazy analogy, I know, but I've heard it pretty commonly.
But yeah, that's basically like exactly that with increments.
I mean, that's how cults work, so I think Nintendo might be trying to indoctrinate us.
Yeah, the cult of buy all the new software or old software when we can be bothered to sell it, but you better not even think about playing our old software any other way. You like Mario? Yeah. Mario's going away!
Mario's dying on March 31st.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Oh man, I quite like a lot of the games that Nintendo puts out, but man, I hate them as a company so much. Yeah, it's so hard to call myself a Nintendo fan. I don't think I realistically can.
Yeah, and honestly, they're not even putting out that many great games at the moment.
Yeah,
they had Metroid Prime Remastered, which is just a remaster, but still great.
Oh yeah, that was good there. Maybe this is gonna go up sometime after Tears of the Kingdom has already been out for a little while. Maybe that game will slap. We'll see.
I don't know, man. Sounds like copium.
Yeah, must well be.
What was I going to say? Completely forgot. Oh well. Do you have anything else? Well, actually, hold on. Where were you going with that frog boiling in water thing? Like, what was your overall point with that to do with mass appeal?
Oh, I was just talking about like things getting normalized there, and Nintendo Online is an example. But I guess we can also see other examples with things like pre-order bonuses, for example, that if it is time limited, permanently missable content, I would say is definitely a flaw in games, but has gotten so normalized that, you know, I'll receive comments of people saying, you can't complain about that because it's just the thing that everyone does. It's just normal now, so you're not allowed to complain about that. Whereas when it's still a problem, I think that there are some problems that have gotten kind of normalized within the gaming industry. Some flaws, like pre-order bonuses being one. There's a lot of games nowadays that it's just kind of become standardized that big name AAA games are gonna come out in buggy, unfinished states and get fixed later. Is the case for a lot of games nowadays. Is another.
Actually, you just made me think of an answer to our question. Oh. I don't think when it comes to flaws in games, I don't think it's all completely subjective. I think there is some genuinely objective element there to it, and that's why I don't think the whole mass appeal argument really works. Where it's like, oh, just because it's more popular doesn't mean it's good. The same case here, it's like, just because something's more accepted doesn't mean it's good or that you can't complain about it. Like, there's still something there that is objectively flawed.
Yeah.
I think that applies to games. It's just can't really get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
But I think there is an objective element there. I don't think it's all just purely subjective, even if a lot of it is.
Yeah. And when stuff like this first comes up, you know, people will complain and be like, man, that's so awful. But then it gets normalized, and then, you know, if it's profitable, everyone starts doing it. One of my favorite examples of that is, I was chatting with one of my coworkers last week who doesn't play video games at all and wanted to learn a little bit about the gaming industry. And I had mentioned that one of the most profitable things nowadays is cosmetics in games. People paying real world money for things like cosmetics, just what their character looks like. And he thought it was one of the most absurd things he'd ever heard in his life. And on paper,
he's right.
It is.
He's correct.
Yeah,
he's right.
Yes. And I was telling him the story of how that started with, I believe the first case was in 2006 with Elder Scrolls Oblivion with the golden horse armor, where Bethesda decided to charge money for horse armor. It was like a few bucks or something like that. And I don't even think it changed the stats or anything like that. I don't know if there were horse stats in that game. I haven't actually played Oblivion myself, another blasphemous thing. I think it was just purely how your horse looked, just giving it gold armor for a few bucks. And it was a pretty unheard of thing, charging for cosmetics in the industry at that point. So people were like, what the heck is this crap? Bethesda, you're charging money just for what the horse looks like? But despite all the criticism, it still made bucket loads of money. And that was a signal to the rest of the industry. People are actually willing to pay money for this useless garbage. And everyone started doing it, and now it's become like such a normalized thing, you know, even though it's pretty sucky.
It's gotten to the point where people actually want to pay for cosmetics now.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't think the idea of paying for cosmetics is like fundamentally bad or anything. I just think prices are crazy. It's like, I'm not paying $5 for one skin. What?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
It's like, even in Smash Ultimate, I'm not gonna lie, I would have paid like some money for
some of the Mii Fighter outfits.
Like different skins, not Mii Fighter outfits, even though that is pretty much the same thing, but just like different skins with characters that are actually cool.
Oh, if there was like different alts, you mean?
Yeah, like different alternate costumes, like $1 for 7 new costumes. I would have been like, yeah, okay, I'm down for that, for some different Roy or Ridley costumes. But like $10 for 2 costumes, like hell no, that's crazy. That's what I think it's insane. I don't think the idea of paying for it is crazy, but the prices are always just ridiculous because I know people will buy it.
And they make it a lot easier for people to buy it and kind of try to partially mask what their prices are by having a different in-game currency, where it's like, pay this real-world money for this many gems, and then you can use these gems to, you know, buy that cosmetic, and it makes enough of a disconnect that you don't really see a real world money price tag on the item itself. Plus, that also comes with other perks, is like the packs that you buy of, you know, gems or whatever the heck in-game currency. You're always going to have some left over, and then you feel incentivized, like, huh, I shouldn't let these go to waste. Maybe I should buy another one to like top it up, and then go buy another thing. You know, all sorts of things there that are such awful systems.
Yeah, but it just gets so normalized somehow.
Yeah,
and people stop caring.
Yeah, it's becoming the new most just general freemium apps slash in-game purchases are the new really big thing within the gaming industry. I find it so fascinating that Elden Ring, which was like one of the most successful games of the year, it was just last year, right? Time isn't going by too fast,
Yeah.
right? I hope.
2022.
Yeah. It was like one of the most successful games of the year and sold insane. It made less money than Genshin Impact does in 1 year. That's just like the new norm nowadays, is freemium games that, you know, try to incentivize you to pay real world money to make progress or to get, you know, useless crap like that.
Well, I'm glad you just said that, because I was going to say, as much as I think paying for cosmetics, giving so much money for that is really stupid, it's completely harmless. Like, it's fine. I wouldn't do it, but like, if you want to do that, hey, whatever. But there'll be games out there where you're paying for better stuff, for better gear. You have to pay just to progress. Or like
loot
Battlefront,
boxes, gotcha mechanics.
loot boxes, yeah. Like, we have to basically pay money to play a certain character, or else you've got to spend thousands of hours grinding. That is terrible.
Yeah. I remember when Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out, and there was the whole thing around that where, you know, you pay full price for the video game already at front, and then you can't even play standard Star Wars characters like Darth Vader. And someone was noting that, and someone did the calculations and calculated you have to play for what, like 60 or 80 hours if you wanted to unlock him legitimately. Whereas you could just like pull out your credit card, gamble with loot boxes, and try to unlock him now. And EA had made some statement about like, oh, we just wanted to instill a sense of like fun and excitement of, you know, really working for it, or, you know, the surprise mechanics, like a Kinder Surprise egg.
Mechanics, yeah.
Surprise mechanics, like a Kinder Surprise eggs that you weirdo Americans don't get to have. Saying that it's like those.
Wait, do we not?
No, they're illegal in the States.
Why? I didn't
Because you
know
can
that.
hide things in them.
Oh, like,
So they're a little chocolate egg with a toy inside.
yeah, I know Kinder eggs are. They have other Kinder stuff. I guess just not Kinder Surprise eggs.
But not that kind of egg, yeah. Anyway,
no.
I believe they made that statement, and it quickly became like the most downvoted Reddit comment ever.
Yeah, it did.
So
that was funny.
So yeah, that's definitely a flaw in a video game, is, you know, putting in mechanics like that that are more beneficial to the developer, but more detrimental to the player. Like, even things like cosmetics, you were saying that, you know, don't really see too much harm in that. But I very much enjoy in video games being able to trek out across the world, do side quests, and get collectibles and stuff like that. That will unlock cosmetic pieces and further expand my options for how I want my character to be. And then, like, my progress becomes reflective in my look and feels like I've earned that, as opposed to, you know, pulling my credit card for it.
Well, I was gonna expand on that and say, I think having cosmetics that you pay for is fine, but when it's something like it is in Battlefront, or what was it, Overwatch 2, where you have to spend years to get one cosmetic, years of grinding, that is still kind of terrible. Like, you should be able to unlock it normally, but just, if you just want to buy it, buy it. Like, but when I say normally, I mean in a reasonable amount of time, not 20 years. But that wouldn't be so bad if they did that. I can't even really think of a game that is like that, honestly, but that wouldn't be so bad.
I've seen some games that put things behind paywalls. It's like, huh? Really? Like, I've very slowly been going through the complete Assassin's Creed series on my channel. I think I started at, like, the beginning of 2020. I'm now, like, including all the spin-offs, I'm close to 20 games in. I just completed Origins earlier this year. And one of the things I noticed in the in-game shop of Origins was you could pay, like, $3 to have certain things marked on your map, like these certain side objectives. But the thing is, they were already marked on your map in-game before. They were just question marks. You don't know what they're going to be until you go up to them and find out what they are and, you know, explore and stuff. But you can pay, like, $3 or whatever it was and have it marked what they are. And I just looked at that like, huh? Really? I guess they figured that there's probably going to be some people that buy it, so why not? Let's just shove it in there. Free money that way.
Some people are going to buy it. Yeah.
It's strange.
Taking advantage of people. So stupid. Evil. Evil.
Evil to the invisible. Boom.
I don't think I could do it as well as you.
I don't think I even did it all that well.
Well, at least it sounded reminiscent.
Reminiscent. Man.
I think I've pretty much gotten to the bottom of everything I wanted to discuss here.
When it comes,
But you
saying reminiscent made me think of what if a game is too similar to something in the past? I'm thinking the thing that came to mind was Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, with that game being too 1-to-1 to Diamond and Pearl there, where, you know, you can just play the originals and get virtually the same experience, if not Platinum. But, you know, if we're assuming that the best game for Generation 4 mainline games of Platinum doesn't exist, assuming that that never came into the picture and it was just Diamond and Pearl and Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, and, you know, BDSP are virtually the exact same game but looking slightly different, is that then a flaw just because it's, you know, basically reselling the same game but with a slightly different coat of paint?
I only say it's a flaw because they sold it for $60.
Yeah,
if they would have sold it for like, maybe $20-$30, it would have been fine.
Yeah, if it was a bit
The
cheaper.
Full price is crazy.
Even Metroid Prime Remastered was not full price.
Exactly, and that was like actually a great remaster.
Yeah, they remastered that really well, and with things like new control schemes and stuff like that that were implemented, that was really cool.
Actual new stuff that people were asking for.
Yeah, and like all the extras and stuff that were included, I thought it was pretty neat. Whereas BDSP being 1-to-1 and reselling at full price, you know,
not even being a finished game, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of thing. I'd count as a flaw.
100%. I thought you were gonna go the direction of saying like something like Assassin's Creed, where sequels are too similar to their predecessors. Like, is that a flaw?
Yeah, and, it's definitely something that you could make a discussion for. Are these games too similar to one another? Are they not changing it up? Because you typically want to have things feel similar enough that it's like, yeah, this is the same game series, but be different enough that each of them is their own unique experience. I feel like the Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy is a really good example of that. All three of them, I'm just ignoring X here for a hot second. All three of the trilogy are, you know, real-time combat-based games where your arts recharge over time, and then you know, can select to do them, and your characters will automatically attack with auto attacks while they're doing that. In Xenoblade 1, you had like a whole bar at the bottom where you have 8 arts, 1 talent art. You use the D-pad to cycle across them and press A to use one, and, you know, that's how it worked. In Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it changed it up where instead of all of the characters having arts that are specific to them, each character had blades, and you could change what blades are on what character. And you use your face button to choose what arts you want, of like, where's a Nintendo controller, for example? Well, all the face buttons but A were 3 different arts, and then A was like your special attack. And then you use your D-pad to switch to different blades, and those blades changed what 3 arts were there on your face buttons.
Damn.
So, rather than having 9 arts available all at once like in Xenoblade 1, you would have 3 at a time, but you could change out which of the 3 were showing and were available, you know, with the D-pad there. And there was a little bit of cooldown on switching. Yeah, so it was a decent bit, it was a decent smidge different. And then when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 came out, they decided that they would have, once again, 3 arts on the face buttons except for A, with, you know, just being able to hit any of those on the fly. A was your talent art button, so, you know, basically your strongest art. And then, rather than changing what arts are available with the D-pad by switching out blades, those were arts too. Well, up, down, and right on the D-pad, and then it was a different function for left. And you could also hold one of the triggers, and then you could combine the arts from the left side, the D-pad, and the right side, the face buttons, into fusion arts where it would do, like, both of them at once, is the case. So the button that was assigned to X would coincide to the one that was up on the D-pad, where if you hold one of the bumpers and then press the button for the fusion art, you now do an art that has both of those effects at once. So all of them are the same general idea of, you know, it's a real-time combat system, your arts are on cooldown, they recharge, and then, you know, you can use them again. But the way that they've handled your arts, what arts are available, and how you use them, and how you go about using them, is completely different in each of the games, and that has made it feel very similar, but so much different to give each their own distinct personality. And I think that's really cool. And I think that there's a lot of games out there that don't even bother doing stuff like that and just, you know, recycle the exact same thing every time. And, you know, that's pretty it might be, I can't words today. I'd probably decide on a case-by-case basis if I decide that it's a flaw or not. And that's something...
yeah, definitely.
And that's something that I feel like is going to come to the forefront a lot in Tears of the Kingdom. And I've already seen, you know, some concerns of online. My biggest concern, once the game comes out, is that it'll feel too samey to Breath of the Wild. Since, you know, it takes place in the same world, but now there's floating islands and stuff. And some reviews are saying there's caves and stuff now, too. But is it overall the same?
I'm not so worried. I feel like it'll be pretty different.
Even
though it's the same world, there's going to be a lot of different stuff, different menus, different places to go. I feel like it's going to render the original game obsolete, but I don't think it'll be too similar. My problem is, and I said this earlier when I was talking about how I wrote my own review, my problem is it's going to have a lot of the same issues. So, you know, we'll see.
We'll see how it goes. But yeah, we'll have to actually play it, experience it, and then, you know, come to a verdict based off of that. But my biggest concern right now is, what if the game feels too samey? What if, and that's another thing that you brought up there about potentially rendering Breath of the Wild obsolete. What if it's just, you know, Breath of the Wild but better, and now what's the point of ever going back to Breath of the Wild again, because these games aren't different enough from each other? Or maybe Tears of the Kingdom is different in enough positive ways that Breath of the Wild didn't have. That's like, why would you ever play Breath of the Wild when you can play this one instead? Maybe.
Well, the real question is, why would you ever play Breath of the Wild in the first place?
Wow,
I'm kidding.
Going hard out here.
I actually do like Breath of the Wild. I'm just kidding.
You're going to incur the wrath of some nasty comments.
Oh, no. I actually do really like that game. But
they get posted and directed towards me anyway, so you're in the clear.
That's why we're doing a podcast on your channel instead of mine. So, but yeah, no, that's actually a pretty fun game. I enjoyed it a lot. I don't just put 100 hours into a game for no reason. It was fun.
Yeah.
But I hope the sequel does a lot better.
Yeah, hopefully address a lot of the drawbacks of the original game. Which now apparently it's allowed to say that we're allowed to say that the original game has drawbacks now that it's 6 years later. My goodness, time flies.
Yeah, I know. My God. I even felt that to an extent with Metroid Dread. I'm getting off track for no reason. Like when the game came out, people were like so scared to criticize it in any way, which is like, yeah, I'm a huge fan of that game. I love that game. One of my 10 favorite games ever. But like, it does have some flaws, some minor flaws, but people just like didn't want to say anything. It's like they were so scared. And anytime anyone did criticize it, they would get mobbed for it. And I'm just like,
that's almost certainly going to happen with Tears of the Kingdom. No doubt about that.
Yeah, it's like, man, come on, y'all. Because all that's going to do is it's going to make it so that they're still going to have these criticisms, but they're just not going to say it yet. So then years later, everyone's going to come out and all at once they're going to start criticizing the game, and it's going to completely turn around the perception of the game. It's going to be like what happens with Sonic games every few years. People are like, oh, no, actually this game is bad. Actually, it's not a good game anymore. We take it back. Why? Well, no, just let people actually criticize it when it comes out. Like, it's fine. It's still good. It just isn't perfect.
And even if you don't agree with, you know, all the criticisms and stuff like that, it's fine to have different opinions, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll get comments on my video essays that do, you know, disagree me for X reason or another, you know, in a respectful way, being like, hey, you know, I disagree on these points for these reasons. Usually, if somebody's disagreeing with me in comments, though, it's usually just getting really mad at me and insulting me and, you know, throwing a little hissy fit.
Yeah. Pokemon fandom especially.
Yeah, I've definitely
really
noticed that.
Visceral. I don't know what it is. Having different opinions is absolutely 100% okay, as long as Harmonia doesn't disagree with me. Then he has to die. No, you could tell. I'm running out of things to say.
Yeah, one thing that I do want to ask about is one aspect that can be really subjective. What about things like art style, where somebody might, you know, really like art style, but other people might not be all that much behind it. Like, when Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was first revealed, a lot of people really didn't like that art style. I was one of them that didn't really like the art style when it was first revealed. Later, it grew on me, and they also improved it a little bit from those trailers. But, you know, there are some games that might just have a general look that some people might not vibe with, or a general art style. Like, I know that there's a lot of people that aren't big fans of super realistic looking graphics, for example. I've seen in recent years. But would
Art style?
something like art style, I feel like it might just be artistic choice. It might not be something that's necessarily, well, I don't know. I was about to say might not be something that's necessarily good or bad, but in Xenoblade 2, I didn't really like the art style at first. They went like full on into anime art style when the first game was like semi-realistic, semi-cartoony. And I don't know how to describe the original game's art style. It was strange. Nowadays, Xenoblade is full anime, but they did that with 2, and I was like, huh, this feels strange and out of place, and what's going on here? But then when I actually played it and I saw the expressiveness of the characters' faces, and especially their eyes, I was like, wow, that's really darn cool. So I feel like there definitely can be some pros to art style, but I wonder if there's any games that I might consider as being flawed for art style.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is like, how would you like? What does having an art style contradict? Like, what other part of a game could the art style bring down?
Well, just your overall experience and feel of what you're looking at, I guess.
Because like,
if the game's ugly, you're not.
If the game's ugly, well, yeah, that's a different thing. I mean, I feel like in PS3 era, all those like shooters that were always gray and brown,
yeah,
everything kind of blended together. I would say that's kind of a bad art style. Because it worked for some games, like some World War II shooters. It was fine because not absolutely everything was gray. It's just like the gray parts were gray. Places that would actually look gray in real life looked gray, surprise. But then other places actually had color to them. That was fine. But in some games, it's literally just everything is one color palette, and it really just kind of drains your brain. It's like not appealing at all. I would say that those aren't very good art styles in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I can't really think of anything else where it's like, oh, the art style is making the gameplay worse.
Well, it will make the gameplay worse. It could potentially make the play experience worse if you don't have something as visually appealing to look at, I guess.
I feel like the art style should accompany the gameplay and the story. As long as it does that, I think it's fine.
I feel like it's a natural fit.
Yeah. Like, what game doesn't have a natural looking art style? Or natural fit?
Yeah, for its story and music there. I could name plenty that don't have natural looking art styles, but
yeah, I had to rephrase
with comparison to what kind of games they are. Yeah, they usually
like what art style doesn't fit the game? I can't even think of one.
I don't know. One contender that is a game that absolutely could have been one of those ones, but isn't, will be things like Smash Ultimate that just cross over so many different games and, different art styles and stuff like that. But I feel like they did a really good job of designing the characters in such a way that they do feel like they can fit together. Like, good on them for that.
That is actually really amazing. Everything fit together. I mean, I wish I could have given Ridley a bit of a better design, but it's okay. It's fine.
Made him a little bit bigger, maybe, too, while they're at it.
I mean, he just looks like he has never eaten in his life. Like, he looks like a starved pterodactyl. It's he looks less like a dragon. I don't know. I mean, they could have messed that up with art styles looking so different that they clash, but like they didn't.
I'm scrolling through like my playthroughs over the years to try and rack my mind for if there's one that I just actually hate the art style of. There is.
What is it?
Roller Coaster Tycoon World.
What's wrong with that art style?
It's the people look unnerving, scary, and like they've had their souls stolen.
What?
It's not great. Hold on.
I'm about to look up what this looks like.
Here, I'll send you an old video of mine.
And I have to put it up on the screen for the...
Yeah, I can here. I was debating about making another version of this for my Scarlet and Violet video essay. That song from the Lorax, How Bad Can I Be? I haven't even seen that movie in forever.
God.
I saw it once.
Yeah, they look like Bubsy humans.
So
Bubsy 3D.
So the video that I just sent you there, how long ago was this? This was a while back. This was in 2018 that I made this shit post of the How Bad Can I Be song there over Roller Coaster Tycoon World. And
Oh my god.
it was oh boy. What a bit of a journey. I wonder if this is still on my computer, if I need to download it. If I need to download it, then I might only download it 720p because YouTube doesn't let you download it 1080p. Oh, it only goes up to 720p anyway. I guess maybe I didn't render it in 1080p back then. But yeah, that's a game that definitely has a not so great art style. And its main competition when it came out of Planet Coaster, aka the people that actually made Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, and I think the producer of that game had worked on all three of, had a hand in all three of the main Roller Coaster Tycoon games. Frontier with Planet Coaster went for like a more cartoony kind of art style stuff. And when you go for cartoony art styles, your game is going to age a lot better as well. But if you try to go for like a bit more realistic, then it's going to age like crap. And like the Roller Coaster Tycoon World art style was still semi-cartoony, but it's just weird and unnerving and awful.
Yeah, those people definitely looked crazy. I did not like that.
Yeah, it's a yeah, it's not very good. So that's an art style that I'll count as a flaw. Is that one? That one's not good.
Hey, what made you think of art style of all things, though?
I don't know. I was just thinking of different aspects of games because the main four lenses that I'll look at games through is, you know, like gameplay, music, story, and, you know, art style. That kind of falls under graphics there, though. Also, when it comes to the other aspects, thinking about story and stuff, something that we were talking about before starting this recording was ludonarrative dissonance, if we want to talk about that a little bit here, where, for anyone who doesn't know, ludonarrative dissonance is basically the disconnect, the difference between gameplay and story in a video game. So if you're beating the ever-living daylight out of a boss, making an absolute joke of them, you defeat them, and then the cutscene plays, and the boss is beating the ever-living daylights out of you. You know, that's ludonarrative dissonance. It's a difference between the gameplay and the story. Or if you're a character in a story that just wants to go out and, you know, bring peace, all about peace, don't want to fight at all, but then in gameplay is going around murderizing every little rabbit and farming EXP off of them. That's a little bit of a bit of dissonance there.
Quite a dissonance.
And
yeah, talking about that before we started this.
Mm-hmm. And talking about how some people might see that as a flaw in regards to some games. I feel like it might depend on the context. Like if your story and gameplay feel like they don't fit together well at all.
Yeah, like
what the heck is going on?
I feel like the way most people use it is so dumb. They'll be like, I was talking to you about this earlier with Link. They'll be playing Breath of the Wild and saying, "Oh my god, why is Link going around doing all this other stuff and not saving Zelda right now?" It's like, brother, that's you, the player. You're the one doing that. Like,
you're the one behind the wheel. It's your choice.
What do you talk? That's not dissonance. And also, like, why wouldn't Link be exploring Hyrule and getting stuff? Like, that seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff people call out as being ludonarrative dissonance. And I'm like, oh, it's not.
They just want stuff to pad their videos so they can make 7-hour video essays on things like Pokemon. I wouldn't know anything about that. They're just padding. No, I don't know.
Yeah. They just talk about the actual game for 10 minutes and then talk about ludonarrative dissonance for 7 hours.
Yeah. That's what happens there. I do think that it can be a flaw if there is, you know, something that does feel like a major disconnect. Like if you are, I can't even think of any examples off the top of my mind because it's not something that really comes up a whole lot. But if you are, actually, you know, now that I'm thinking about 7-hour video essays, there is actually ludonarrative dissonance in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet because the story is supposed to be, hey, you're a student at this school, things are super school themed, all your friends and companions throughout this adventure are your fellow classmates, you're doing school things, but in gameplay, you go to the school for 10 minutes and then you screw off.
I mean, well, he was a student before that. No, it's just the part that you play is not a student right now.
But you still have to wear the school uniform throughout the whole thing.
You are so hung up on that.
I guess,
yeah.
Guess that would be an example of Lunar dissonance. I did not bring that up in my 7-hour video essay on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now that I think about it, it is kind of an example of that. Well, I brought up the fact that you have to wear the uniform, despite basically never going to this school. I didn't call it Lunar dissonance, but I guess it sort of is.
I don't really think it is, honestly.
Might not be.
I feel like now we're just kind of running through things in games that are flaws. We're not even on the topic of what makes a flaw anymore. I guess we're talking about what makes a flaw within these specific things, but it's still a little disconnected from the topic.
When it comes to, if we return back to the idea of objective flaws, one of the chapters that I found to be the most fascinating to work on in the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet video essay was Chapter 2, the one that talks about purely it being an open world game. Like, nothing else about the gameplay, just how it handled itself as an open world title. And in that chapter, I talked about how I drew a little bit of reference to one of Sakurai's videos, where his definition for game essence is the fun of balancing risk and reward. So, for example, if you're playing a racing game and all you do is race forward in a straight line, that's not really fun. But if you're playing a racing game with all sorts of twists and turns, and you can drift to be able to, you know, get a little bit more speed, go faster, but risk going off the course, then that can be fun because you're balancing risk and reward. And he talked about how he tried to incorporate that into Kirby Air Ride by having, like, the kind of pull back drift thing. I don't even know what it's called, but you kind of hold the trigger for a little bit while you're drifting, and it's kind of like you wind up and then you shoot forward and stuff like that to get that, like, push and pull kind of feel, the action and reaction, and have that risk and reward kind of feel to it.
He loves saying push and pull.
Yeah. And in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I talk about how there is no risk in going to higher level areas early, because you can just not fight anything. Every fight is optional unless you get into a random encounter because you stepped on some little bird Pokemon that you didn't see because it was so tiny. You know, unintentional kind of ways there. But in a normal gameplay experience, there's really no risk to going anywhere. You can go anywhere in that game at basically no risk. But there's also no reward for doing it early. So there is no risk and reward element to the open world of that game.
There's no risk or reward. Damn.
Yeah, there's neither end of the spectrum for playing the open world game as an open world game. Which begs the question of, what's the point? And that, I feel like, is a kind of criticism of a flaw in a video game that is a bit more objective, directly going in from a more game design analysis perspective, rather than just like, I feel like this is crap, and, you know, that's crap. You know?
I think most anything that someone feels like is bad, there's usually an objective reason to it.
Yeah, might not be able to put it properly into words, but there has to be some sort of reason behind it, yeah?
Yeah, it might not be, like, overwhelming enough to make the whole game bad or make the whole aspect of the game bad, but there could
like
still
The
be
Last of
flaws
Us.
to it. Well, I mean, that's up to you. I haven't played it.
Well, where it had like the one aspect that, well, several glitchy aspects that were really, really bad, but the overall game was still good. I don't know what I want to think of that game after that fever dream of an experience I had.
Yeah, that looked pretty crazy.
It was certainly something. It's interesting to talk about there. I feel like a lot of the time in my video essays, if something's a lot more subjective rather than objective, I don't really talk about it as much. Like, if it's important stuff to get through, like a very key aspect, I'll still go through it and share my opinions. Like the soundtrack, for example. I had a whole soundtrack chapter in that essay, like I do with all my super long essays. And, you know, gave my opinions on that. But, you know, it's not exactly going to be reflective of everyone's experience. But in things where it's not as necessary to talk about, it's not as core of a thing, I typically don't talk about it. Like on the Scarlet and Violet essay, I've had a couple comments mentioning that they were surprised that I didn't talk about the Pokemon designs. And the reason that I didn't really talk about the Pokemon designs at all is because I feel like, you know, my opinion really isn't gonna mean anything when it comes to that. Like, some people are gonna love him, some people are gonna hate him. There's not really much that I can analyze or identify to say that this is good or bad. I mean, I can look at things like Flamingo and be like, this is just literally a flamingo, what the heck? You know,
yeah, literally. Like but it's in the shape of a boxing glove, so that means it's okay.
Wait, what?
It's supposed to be like in the shape of a boxing glove. It's a body.
Is it?
That's why it's a fighting type. Yeah, that's why it's a fighting type.
I just did not know that.
See, it's so stupid. That's what people will say.
I think my least favorite design was Flittle.
I don't know who that is.
Look it up. It's so... It looks like a little toy that a toddler would play with. It's
Little. Oh, it's weird. It doesn't look like anything.
Yeah, I know.
It really doesn't. I'm still mad about the Gen 5 designs. I know you love Gen 5, but literally keys, cogs, a lamp. Come on.
Keys. That's not my generation. Get out of here with your accusing my generation of keys BS.
What? I thought Gen 5 was your favorite one.
No, I'm saying get out of here with your accusations of keys BS. Keys was Gen 6.
Was it?
Yeah. Don't be accusing my generation of the crap that is keys.
Alright, fine. Well, you still had cogs and lamps.
Surprised you didn't mention the literal garbage.
Oh yeah, the garbage too. And then what was it? Gen 7 had a mound of sand. Like, come on.
Yeah,
there
are some like that. I was thinking about mentioning it in the essay, but you know, I feel like if I talk about some, then I gotta talk about like, you know, most of them, because you know I'm thorough with my essays. And I was just like, I know that this is really subjective. I'm just gonna not touch it. So it was one of the things that I actually didn't touch at all in that 7-hour essay. Was Pokemon designs. I made little jabs at it here and there. Like little jokes about it not being that great. But I didn't ever say anything directly in it because I feel like, you know, what can I really analyze about it? Apart from just making my little jabs. So I made my little jokes, my couple little shit posts that were in there. That's it, really.
Well, yeah, I feel like you're not a character designer, really, so you might not be qualified enough to talk about that without people getting all over you for it.
I'm not a sound designer. I'm sort of a musician, but not that great of one when it comes to soundtrack, but I'll still gladly analyze it, even if, you know, and try to articulate my reasons well and stuff. What I criticized the most popular theme in that, one of the most popular themes in that game, at least, Penny's theme. I've yet to be notified about a comment of people being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't like that. I mean, it could be out there. It could just be that YouTube's not notifying me about it. I don't know how YouTube decides which comments it's going to tell me about and which not. So, I don't know if it just rolls dice or what it does. So it could be on there. Anyway. And I know that kind of thing can be pretty subjective, but, you know, I have a whole chapter on that. Whereas, you know, the Pokemon designs, I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to mention that. I talked about the human designs, and I was like, yeah, the human designs are awesome. Human designs are great in this game.
They do actually look really cool.
Yeah, I like them. They're pretty good.
What I've seen, they look great.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Like Nimona and that dude with the hat, white hair.
What?
I can't think of any other ones. Isn't there a dude with a hat and white hair, and he like has a lion?
What are you talking about?
Hold on. I
don't.
On Scarlet and Violet characters, we're looking this up right now.
I don't.
Isn't there? Am I crazy?
He has a lion.
Yeah, this guy. Let me see. What is his name? Arvin. Okay, maybe he doesn't have a hat.
His hair isn't white. I thought it was like grayish, right?
Okay, yeah, it's like a brownish. Whatever.
And he has a dog, not a lion.
Oh, it's a dog. Okay, well, I didn't know. I thought it was a lion. I only seen like a few snippets of gameplay.
It's a fucked up looking dog.
Well, it's a Pokemon, you know?
No, it's a Mastiff. It's Mabostiff.
I don't know what you just said.
You know what a Mastiff?
Just cursed me.
Chanting witchcraft here.
It sounds like.
But yeah, yeah.
Even though the character designs actually look great.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to know like who these characters are.
They're fantastic
Just
though.
from their designs.
They turned the Professor of the Past, Professor Sada, into like swole gains. She's got abs for days, and then they turned the male professor all about the future, Turo, into Giga Chad.
Yeah, Kit and Krista. Not messing.
What?
The future guy does look like Kit though.
Oh, is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
Oh.
Kit and Krista.
Guess I hadn't heard the name before. Yeah, he's
The name of their show is their names.
Oh. But yeah, they
Krista.
the character designs were great though.
Yeah,
Those.
they're really cool.
But yeah, I don't know if there's any game that I'd say like main character designs are so ugly that that it would be worth counting as a flaw. I know that there's always going to be like some art styles and stuff like that that aren't, you know, that some people just really don't like. Like maybe somebody doesn't want to play Xenoblade Chronicles because they don't like the anime look or something like that, for example. You know.
Well, I'm less worried about the anime look, more about the anime everything else.
They just don't want to get labeled as weebs. Oh, I don't know.
I mean, it just looks crazy. Like I saw some clips of the game. You know, if Xenoblade weren't such a highly hailed series, I would probably avoid that game like the plague. I'm gonna play it at some point.
It's so good. It's one of my favorite game IPs nowadays. I wasn't a big fan of 3, but 1 and 2 I love. I haven't beaten the DLC for 3 yet, so maybe I'll end up change my mind. We'll see if that ends up being amazing. But
yeah, I still gotta go through the whole series. Xenoblade is honestly on my list of games to get pretty soon.
Would recommend
we'll see.
Start with 1.
Of course, yeah. Oh, actually, I'm gonna start with 3.
I was recently chatting to a streamer friend that said he started with 2, then went to 3, and then played 1. I was like, huh? Why?
Played it in reverse order.
No, it was like 2, 3, 1, so not even reverse order.
Oh, that's weird. I mean, they played the second one, then they just wanted to play the sequel. I'm like, well, I guess I'll try the third one.
3 isn't even the sequel, right? 3 is like the sequel to 1 and 2. 1 and 2 take place at the same time, then 3 is the sequel to both of them. It's weird. Xenoblade lore is interesting, though. But anyway, I think about lore. I think one thing that we were talking about a bit before the recording, and I think we might have talked about it a little bit at the beginning, is games that kind of expect you to search around for their story and stuff like that, where it's not super blatantly evident and stuff. One example I had about that, I'm gonna go back to Bravely Default 2 again. The story of that game, it seemed to be expected for players to like dig deep and really uncover what the heck it was. But its story just straight did not make sense if you didn't. Like, I got through that game so confused, being like, what even is happening here? And there were so many weird storytelling choices in that. Like
what?
Like, you go to face the pseudo-final boss in this one area, and you're not powerful enough to beat it, so the heroes flee, and they go to the land of the fairies to get help. So you get to the fairy village that's hidden away, and the fairies tell you, alright, there's something that's gonna help you in, like, the depths of our... Was it in the tree? The depths of some cave thingamabob under some tree. So you go to the depths of that cave to see, like, what's down there. Surprise! It's the final boss! And you fight it there.
Randomly fight the final boss with no build-up. Yeah. That kind of sounds like an interesting idea, but... I don't know.
It was the same final boss that you fled from, and came there to get help. And then surprise, the final boss is down there now.
There. Teleported.
Yeah. So weird. Apparently that story does make a lot more sense, Guzma was telling me, if you dig deep. Like, when that game was still, like, freshly released, he was doing some digging and stuff like that, and being like, oh, it's actually kind of interesting. But I just, you know, beat that game, wanted to move on with my life, and I just left being so confused at that. I do like it when games do have additional lore that you can dig for, additional backstory that you can get and stuff. Like,
Yeah,
like when I was playing Last of Us Part 1, it had that, for example. But if it's required or if it's expected, then it's not good anymore, and I'd count that as a flaw.
Yeah, I think that is. I agree. It's like a storytelling shortcoming.
Yeah.
I think it should have like an actual main story that's interesting, and then a lot of background lore. Games like Dark Souls and Hollow Knight don't really have that.
Yeah.
It's all just background lore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw a comment on a Dark Souls video talking about every Souls game. Kill a bunch of gods and then watch a 5-hour video about why you did it. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
That's the experience. Yeah, I got so confused going through the Dark Souls trilogy. Like, I did have to look up videos on YouTube afterwards because people had to piece a story together through, you know, not just bits of environmental storytelling, but even things like item descriptions on random junk in their inventory.
On everything. Yeah. Absolutely everything. Yeah.
I mean, that could be some of the fun of games like that, like Dark Souls, like Five Nights at Freddy's, if the story of that game actually made sense at this point. After getting
that is the thing with Dark Souls. I think that's done a little bit intentionally.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing with that game is community. Like, you're supposed to work together with other players. So like working together to solve the story is like definitely part of the fun. Even though I still wish there was an actual story to some degree, just some kind of structure.
But story is not the focus of that game. Something like a JRPG like Bravely Default 2, where you'd think the story would be a main focus, and there is so many cutscenes and so much story, and it just isn't making sense. That I find a lot more inexcusable than something like an action exploration game like Dark Souls, where you're put into this world. What the heck am I doing here? I don't know. Let's just keep playing. And, you know, the story isn't really the focus of the gameplay experience, you know? Whereas it is in a story-based JRPG.
I do think the story and the world are our focus. It's just that it's not really told to you. It's not meant to be told to you, like...
Meant to be figured out a little bit.
Yeah, like I feel like it's still a big focus and a part of why people love it so much. It's just not traditionally told.
Yeah. I got you there. Another good example of that is something like Metroid Prime as well, where you could just like rush through every section, not understanding what's going on. But if you actually scan things, it's like, oh.
Ew, scanning. Hollow Knight is like that too, even though Hollow Knight is a lot like Dark Souls, where the lore is all in the background. Like the first time I beat that game, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know who my character was, who anyone I just killed was, or why I just killed them. And I watched a bit, it's like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense. It's actually really cool. I actually love the lore of that game and stuff like Dark Souls. It's extremely interesting. I just wish there was also a story.
Yeah.
It was told to you.
Something that you experience there, and like a reason for doing things. Like when I played Dark Souls for the first time, and I go face the final boss there. Was his name Gwyn? I think.
Gwyn, yeah. Lord of Cinder.
Yeah, Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. I didn't remember off the top of my head because without enough story and build up, I'm not gonna remember off the top of my head. I'd just be there being like, I don't know why I'm fighting him. I mean, it would be explained to me a little bit in my Twitch chat, so I know a little bit about that. But otherwise, just like, oh, I'm fighting this guy.
And that is kind of, that boss fight reminds me of another thing with like environmental storytelling, because I don't remember if you remember, but Gwyn, I don't remember if you remember. I don't know if you remember, but Gwyn was a pretty easy boss.
Yeah, I beat him with oven mitts on.
What does that mean?
It means I put on oven mitts, and then...
In real life?
Yes. And then... Because it was a charity stream, and that's...
Okay. And play Dark Souls with oven mitts.
Yeah. And I beat the final boss while wearing oven mitts, so I couldn't feel the buttons at all. I just had to generally try and remember where through the mitt the button would generally be. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, like he was actually a pretty easy boss fight. And you would think, oh man, the final boss being easy? Stupid. Especially in a game like Dark Souls where it's supposed to be so hard. But the lore of the boss actually makes a lot of sense, because he was like, he lost pretty much all of his power and he was kind of dying. By the time you get to him, he was just going through it. He was not really at his maximum strength at all.
Yeah.
It actually makes a lot more sense in the lore, and I kind of like that. But like, you're not going to know that when you're fighting him, so I feel like that's kind of a problem.
But yeah, I guess that makes sense for him being a bit easier then. other bosses are just gonna be unnecessarily BS, like Beta Chaos.
Chaos. Yeah, I didn't like Four Kings either. A lot of people seem to love that fight, but I didn't like it.
I wasn't a big fan.
Because it literally was just a DPS check.
Yeah.
It didn't have any more depth than that to me. Either you have enough damage and it's super easy, or you don't and it's almost impossible.
Yeah. That can be a flaw in a video game then. If a boss's handle is basically just like a damage check.
Yeah, I don't really like that.
Or if it's designed like Bed of Chaos, where it's just like, yeah, here's a bunch of BS all over the place, just keep doing it until you get through.
Yeah, that was terrible. Honestly though, I was pleasantly surprised when I beat Bed of Chaos, because I fully thought it was going to be another boss after that. And then I would have to redo it every time if I died.
Yeah, it was basically like, run to either the right or left side, do the thing, die, run on the next respawn, run to the other side, do the thing, die. Then on the final one, run down the center, do the thing. And now the Bed of Chaos is defeated, and that's it.
Yeah, it sucks. I thought it was going to be do the thing, and then there's another boss immediately after all that garbage.
A boss that you actually fight.
Yeah, like a real boss. Oh,
yeah.
It was just over. So even though that boss sucked, I was like, oh my god, that's it? Nice.
Also thinking about the Soulsborne games and flaws in boss design. When I think of Elden Ring, one of the bosses that everyone immediately thinks of, including myself, is Melania, Blade of Mikola. And, you know, she has some pretty BS stuff. I don't think you've played Elden Ring yet.
No, but I have a friend who plays Elden Ring every single day, and he has complained to me about Melania quite a few times.
And I do, I feel like most of her stuff is honestly pretty fine. A lot of it does fall under the category of, you know, this is really hard, but not unfair. But there are two things that I would argue that make her actually kind of unfair. One is Waterfowl Dance, which is like
Waterfowl Dance. Yeah,
the
that's
most
the one that
anime BS thing ever. Like, how the heck do I avoid this? There are ways to do it, but my goodness gracious. And two is the fact that she heals herself when she hits you, even if you're blocking too.
Yeah, I've been told that. It sounds ridiculous. There is a mod on PC, I don't know if you have it on PC, that changes the whole game a little bit, and Waterfowl Dance is nerfed. So she's like a much more fair fight. Yeah.
They generally nerf the boss a little bit after. I managed to beat her pre-nerf like a pro gamer, I think. I don't remember, it was like a year ago.
Yeah, probably via cheating. No, I'm just kidding.
My mimic tier and ganged up on her. Which some hardcore players would be like, that's basically cheating.
So I was right again.
But yeah, I feel like, you know, sometimes there can be some poor design options that, you know, could be argued to be flaws, like Melania's Waterfowl Dancer healing, or Bed of Chaos just being a mess and not really fun.
Not even a boss, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of bosses in the Dark Souls trilogy can be pretty fun, but that one's just chore.
Literally.
Kind of meh.
What about Ornstein and Smoke? That one was great. That was a great boss.
That one was cool. I actually kind of like that. I like that one.
That was my favorite one. Good boss.
It was definitely a big difficulty spike, but not one that felt like, you know, impossible or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was like really challenging for this is the midpoint of the game. That was good. I like that one.
It was very, you know, I don't know if you've read Berserk, but it's based off a fight in Berserk.
Huh. I did not know
Where
that.
Guts
I've heard
has
the
to
name
fight.
before, but I only heard the name.
Those games are pretty much based on Berserk, or inspired by him.
Close to me.
Yeah, what? That's crazy. Yeah, Berserk is amazing. I've been reading it with Lou. There's literally a fight, because Guts has a giant sword. I don't know if you probably don't know.
I don't
He has a giant
know.
sword. And if you ever see a giant sword in anime, it was probably inspired by Berserk. Like Cloud's Buster Sword was inspired by Guts' sword. And normally, whenever he sees an enemy, he literally just cuts him in half with his giant sword. But he came across these two enemies. One was super big, the other was small and fast. And it's like he would try to cut the big one, but the small one would keep interrupting him and hitting him every time. And he was like, damn, I can't kill any of these guys, so the other one keeps getting in the way. And every time he would try to swing quick enough to hit the small guy, the big guy would just swing at him with his giant hammer. That's what Orange Student Smoke came from.
I got
Pretty
you.
cool. Pretty cool.
So, yeah. That one was a neat boss.
It's a very cool boss.
But I do think Soulsborne does have its fair share of flawed bosses.
Yeah, definitely. Like Capra Demon.
I hated Capra Demon so much.
Yeah,
like, the
it's
boss
just
itself isn't even hard. It's just the fact that the arena that you fight in is so tiny. You don't have any room to move around.
You've got 2 dogs that just jump you immediately.
Yeah. Deal with that, too.
Yeah, it's just a blatantly bullshit boss.
I hate that one so much. Never want to deal with the Capri Sun Demon ever again.
Capri Sun Demon, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
All
right.
I think one other thing that might well be worth. Did we talk a little smidge about soundtrack stuff though? We were talking about it a little bit before starting the recording, but
talking about Breath of the Wild. Well, sure, we can talk about this. Like, what defines a flawed soundtrack?
Because that's something that's always going to be a bit subjective.
Well, I think Breath of the Wild is a great example because that game, the soundtrack really does not accompany the mood of the game like at all. It's just kind of there.
Yeah, a few notes playing here and there.
Yeah, you'll get like a couple piano notes, and 10 minutes later, a few more piano notes.
I guess it fits the mood of here's a bunch of nothing around you while you're going around in fields of nothing, at least. But
people are gonna hate people are gonna think we hate Breath of the Wild. Chill out, chill. Chill.
I love Breath of the Wild. Fun time. I love Breaking In too. I'm sure I'll have a lot of fun breaking Tears of the Kingdom in 2. I can't wait. That'll be fun there. But the music aspect, not a big fan of there because it's not really present within the world.
It's like you could honestly almost turn it off. We were talking about earlier, Minecraft. Well, actually, let's back it up. Because the main defense people always have with that game's soundtrack is literally that, what do you want? Ocarina of Time, adventure theme? You just want the Wind Waker's Great Sea music? It's
or like Twilight Princess Hyrule Field.
Twilight Princess, like, no, it doesn't have to be some huge in-your-face, loud, bombastic adventure theme. It just has to be good music, and that's possible to do.
Yeah,
Minecraft
it's not
literally had it.
Yeah, it's not like the only options are barely present, barely existing, or super adventurous in your face. There are ways to handle atmospheric music. Like, one of the best examples is, Minecraft. Another really good example is Octopath Traveler. Octopath Traveler has really amazing atmospheric music that never feels like it interferes or is like right in your face. Well, the battle themes are right in your face, but they're the battle themes.
Well, and even in Breath of the Wild, like, I feel like a lot of the battle themes and town themes just kind of aren't that exciting. They don't really get you going, like, at all.
Yeah.
And 3 of them are just remixes of the same music. It's like, yeah, like, they're okay, like, they're fine, but not that good, I feel like.
Yeah, that's kind of the way that I felt about that.
And they usually don't even fit the mood. Like, what is Hinox's theme? Like, what is going on there? Like, what is happening? It just sounds like chaos.
Yeah.
But it's a giant demon stomping towards me. Why is this theme playing? The one area where I felt like the music really hit was Hyrule Castle. That was the one part where I was like, okay, this feels like we're entering a dangerous dungeon and we could die at any minute. Like, this is the climax of the game. It actually fits its environment.
I personally, for final dungeon themes, prefer the more adventurous approaching the end kind of feels. Like final dungeon theme of Xenoblade Chronicles 1, The End Lies Ahead, for example, is a really amazing theme. Or things like Temporal Tower from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon are more my kind of vibe. But I do get that, like, the Hyrule Castle theme does kind of make sense as, like, a kind of somber and sad theme that makes you reflect on what happened to this place, you know, and approaching
exactly.
Like, I can acknowledge that.
It also very, like, tense. I do feel like the outside theme is kind of adventurous. It's like a marching band type thing as we march towards Ganon.
I wouldn't remember the outside theme. It's been a while since I've been there.
Yeah, well, I think both of them are good. The inside one is a lot more somber. Just fitting.
Also, thinking about the bosses out in the world and having talked about Dark Souls there, that just made me think that I much prefer a Dark Souls kind of handle on unexpected bosses appearing music-wise. Like, if you're playing Breath of the Wild and you encounter you know, a Hinox and it starts playing the do 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 or whatever the heck thing
before
up
you
there.
even see it.
Whereas if you're playing Dark Souls and, you know, some boss appears out of nowhere, it's like the do 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 do, you know, the kind of music that makes you go, holy shit, you know,
yeah, it's like,
you know, that
why
kind
is
of
boss
music.
music playing?
Yeah. That
Literally, it's
like
I
that
think I
kind of
get-
music theme that makes you like flinch and go, oh my goodness, what the heck, you know, that kind of feel. Does a really good job of.
like, I get it. Hinoxes are supposed to be kind of goofy, so their theme is goofy, but like, it's still, I don't think it's great for a boss theme.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that theme. I'm not a big fan of the Talus theme, which is, you know,
Yeah,
a
me
whole bunch of
neither.
samey kind of stuff. It has one really good tune, the tune that goes do 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 do. That tune's really good, but then it's like a solid minute of just kind of meh, samey.
Random noises.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one tune is good, but that's it.
Yeah, no, that's how I feel about a lot of the game. And like a lot of the town themes, the only ones that are really good are like remixes of other town themes in previous games. And they're not even as good as what they're remixing usually. So it's like...
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt a lot of the time. My first ever streamer friend spent a long time to convince me to actually kind of like the Hateno Village theme a little bit. But most of what I enjoy about that is people that remix it into something that's even more chill than the original anyway. But, you know, eventually the Hateno Village theme grew on me a little bit, but...
I'm not gonna lie, I don't even remember it. I've been there so many times. I don't even remember it. But yeah, I'm not just trying to harp on Breath of the Wild. Like, that is a good example of a game with music that just doesn't really fit its environment all the time. And even what it does, it's still not that great.
Yeah,
I think that's
that's kinda
exactly
how I
how
feel.
a soundtrack can be flawed.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a really good example of a case study game of one that does have so many things going for it and, you know, was critically acclaimed because it had a lot of really good things going for it. But, you know, has a lot of flaws that, as was mentioned earlier, you know, a lot of people didn't want to say for the longest time, but some people are starting to come out of the woodwork about that. But there might be a similar situation for Tears of the Kingdom coming up. We'll see here if, you know... I'm sure that there will be a lot of people afraid to speak their full thoughts on the game because they're gonna get flamed if they do.
You know what? Let's say something positive about Breath of the Wild so that people like don't just seem like we're bullshitting.
Yeah,
when we say
it's a great game.
I think Breath of the Wild has the best freedom and exploration ever of any game, except maybe like Minecraft, but that's kind of doesn't count. It's literally the ability to go anywhere you want at absolutely any time, like truly, no catch. No other game that has done anything like that. The problem for me is that you can do anything. You know, I'm not even gonna have a but. I'm just gonna leave it at the positive, actually. I almost missed my own point. I was trying to praise the game. Okay, yeah, that's my positive thing. The freedom and exploration are 10 out of 10 to me.
Yeah, I love the exploration of that game. I think it's really fun to go around the world doing all sorts of things, especially if you break it into. I love the glitches of that game. I so hope that Tears of the Kingdom is just as broken. I really hope. I guess I'll find out late tonight, but I've really got my fingers crossed. I have so much fun with that. Might be my favorite part of the game is the glitches. So much fun.
I wonder if mine is in the mail already. That'd be crazy.
We'll wait that extra day or whatever there.
Probably gonna be here tomorrow. Alright, though.
I guess one small thing. Is it considered a flaw? Like, the mail just made me think there. Is it considered a flaw of the game, or just like the overall game atmosphere, company, whatever the heck, if there's something just really bad about the way that it's handled in terms of how it's released and stuff like that? One example of that is Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Special Edition, which I don't know if you heard about the stuff surrounding that when that was a thing there last year.
No.
So, because there's been a long history of people buying up Nintendo Special Editions and then, you know, scalping them for absurd prices, Nintendo decided that they would not sell the Special Edition to, like, any other middlemen. It would be exclusively through the My Nintendo site, and you have to be logged in, and then they limit it to, like, one per person, essentially. Their website didn't really work and was constantly going down because there was so much traffic on it because they didn't account for how much traffic there would be when they limited pre-orders to just that one site. And, you know, it went down and they were like...
that too. Because, like, what if you want to get a gift for someone too?
Yeah.
On top of yours, and people could still
you can just make
bypass
another
it by
account.
just having multiple accounts. Yeah.
You can just do that. But there was such high traffic that they didn't anticipate because they had the pre-orders open one day. So they announced like pre-orders open this day. Site went down like immediately. Their whole website wasn't working properly. Barely anyone was able to snag one. They were like, all right, we're gonna make it available on this next day here, like a month from then. And they made it available again for one day, like a month from then. You had to refresh the page so much for it to come up. You would go into like a little waiting list that gives you no indicator of how close you're getting or if there's any progress or if it's just a frozen page. I eventually got in and snagged one for myself. And I did have an alternate account because I wanted to snag one for Guzma as well because he was busy at work. And I wanted to snag one for him. And, you know, both these accounts went in about the same time. I secured mine first, and then when I went to go secure that second one, it was already sold out. Such a mess. Nintendo had to apologize over it. But would something like that be considered a flaw with the overall atmosphere of the game, the handle with the game, or is the game content and the overall stuff like that considered separate aspects?
I would kind of consider it separate, but I feel like you can take that into account instead of just giving like super glowing praise. You can say, well, hey, they messed up these other things.
Yeah.
I feel like that doesn't really have to do with the game itself, but it's something you could just take into account.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't have to do with the content of the game, but it does have to do with like the content that you receive for those that want it, even if it's not in the game. Those that want the special edition contents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The service is just trash.
Oh yeah, leave it to Nintendo to do something like that. I think I think the Tears of the Kingdom special edition was available, you know, pretty much everywhere after they learned their lesson from Xenoblade 3. I haven't even bothered to look into special editions for that because I know there's no chance I'm getting one.
Yep, same. So, even Metroid Dread, I couldn't find a special edition for that until 2 months later.
Oh jeez.
No, and I should have pre-ordered, but I didn't. And then after pre-order sold out, I couldn't find it for literally until December. It came out in October.
Why does Nintendo never produce enough of their special editions? I don't get it.
I don't know either.
Like, you'd think they'd learn after all these instances. Huh, our special editions are popular. We should make some more. Nope.
Yeah, we should make more than 10.
Yeah. That it.
They make them in increments of 10 at a time. Like, come on.
Yeah. That's kind of the way that it be. So, yeah, I would count that as flaws with, you know, maybe not the content of the game itself. It's not going to affect, like, the normal standard player. But the overall atmosphere and handle on the game, it is worth counting as, you know, something that's flawed there. Because, my god, their handle on stuff like that, what a mess.
So, that's pretty much all we had to talk about flaws in video games. I'm just going to go over the conclusions that I feel like we came to, and stop me if you hear something wrong.
Your favorite games are trash.
No. Your favorite games are trash.
How dare.
Nuh-uh! Yes. Uh-huh. My favorite game is better than your favorite game.
No.
Okay, so a flaw is a contradiction of game design. You can determine a flaw. And there are some things that aren't contradictions. They can't necessarily be a flaw, but they can have aspects of them that are flawed. Like we were talking about with Animal Crossing and how going in and out of the house was annoying. Like that doesn't really contradict anything because the game is supposed to be slow, but it's still annoying. So
yeah,
like
and it can depend on the player on if they find it annoying or if it's just meh.
Exactly. That's why I say only part of it is flawed. The whole thing isn't. And glitches are only flaws if they actually interfere with the gameplay.
Yeah, if they detract from it in some way. Like if you're trying to defeat a bunch of dudes with guns and Zambos and you have to look through the rave room, figure out what the hell is going on in there.
Yeah, that would definitely be a flaw. We came to the conclusion that as long as the game accomplishes its goal, it's not a flaw. But if something is unintentional, as long as it doesn't contradict other aspects of the game or infringe on the main goal, and it's fine. Like
And
with
players
Melee,
are, like, hating it.
yeah, like Melee has a bunch of stuff that's unintentional, but most of it doesn't really infringe on the gameplay at all, and people still love it, so it's fine. And then we talked about how if you don't know developer intent, it's kind of impossible to really assess these things. So it's like if you don't know intent, then you can only go by the product. That was the last thing. And we came to another conclusion on mass appeal, but that's a little bit harder to grasp.
Yeah. Again, from the
So I'm not
perspective
gonna-
of the company itself, as long as it's selling well, then great. But yeah, in terms of general reception and stuff, ideally you do want to be making a game that people are enjoying.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think so. Yeah, that's pretty much the end of that discussion. So we're gonna be doing another one of these tomorrow, right, Harmonia?
Yeah,
tomorrow.
definitely.
We're gonna get 5 guests on here.
Yeah, and we're all going to be discussing why your favorite games are trash.
No, we're gonna be discussing why your favorite games are trash, actually.
Yeah. So,
No, but we're gonna do another one of these in the future, at least one more. But when, because our schedules are crazy, especially yours, because you love doing new stuff.
yeah, I kind of have a lot of projects.
We're gonna have a special guest on here next time who's actually a game developer himself.
Oh, firm. At first I was like, wait, we're having a special guest? Who? At first I thought you were just throwing it out there, like, we're gonna have a special guest next time, so that you could put that on my shoulders of like, good luck, Harmonia, you figure out, get a special guest for us next time, by putting that expectation on the
No, I
viewer.
wouldn't do that. No. We've been planning to get Fermata on the show since we started.
Yeah.
So, I've
Yeah,
actually
we
been
have
planning to
a,
get him on here since before.
Yeah, we have a special guest next time. He's actually a previous president, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, we're actually gonna have Barack Obama on here tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
So good luck getting that happening. No. Imagine if I just like had you try and get some game developer. No.
I could get a game
it's
developer if you really want one.
You could. We should do that some other time.
Yeah.
The game developer I'm talking about is a friend of ours, Mata. He's gonna be on here next time. I don't know what we're gonna be discussing. We're gonna talk amongst ourselves to figure that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much all we had to talk about today.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Any final thoughts, Harmonia?
We gotta seal our lips in terms of the Tears of the Kingdom flaws for the next several months if we don't want to be flamed.
No, fight the power. Right, rage against the machine.
I mean, I guess that's already what I do with my Pokemon essays, but
Yeah, you already get cooked for that. Although you don't really get cooked, but people just get mad at you.
yeah, pretty much. But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, glad that we got around to doing this. I did hope to originally get this one recorded and out there before the Scarlet and Violet video essay came out, but then I got COVID, so didn't end up working out.
Kind of ruined everything.
Yeah. But now I'm better. I still have lingering cough here and there, and I thought I might need to edit it out. I didn't cough a single time during this recording. It's amazing. Feeling a lot better in that case. But yeah, definitely looking forward to discussing some more things here. And giving out some more controversial opinions that are going to get us in hot water when we criticize some people's favorite games.
Yeah, we're gonna get killed next time again.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. What did we talk about last time? Last time we talked about what makes
Review scores.
ratings in video games, review scores.
Yeah.
Whose idea was that? Was that yours or mine?
I think it was yours. I think
Mine.
you originally wanted to like talk about it a little bit. You wanted to chat with me about it, and I was like, I want to do a podcast around here for a little while. I want to turn it into a podcast, right?
Okay, yeah, that is what happened. So I came up with both of these. So you and Fermata should pick the next one.
Okay, I can do that. I have things I want to talk
Honestly,
about.
I was gonna say honestly, since Fermata's the guest, he should probably pick. You can figure that out.
Yeah, something that we'll figure out for then, and we'll get that one out someday after tomorrow.
Update yeah after tomorrow. It's not coming out tomorrow.
Yeah. It'll be out at some point. Hopefully it won't be as much of a gap in time between the upload of this one and the last one, because yeah, there was a bit of a gap there because scheduling was weird. Hopefully not as long as that one. Hopefully we, can get into doing this here and there, because yeah, it is a really good avenue to be able to discuss other subjects that I don't have the time to make a full video essay on for every single thing, good other means to do it.
Yeah. All about you. No,
Yeah, I gotta rake in those viewers, those numbers. So make sure to smash that subscribe button.
hit that subscribe button.
Only
Hit that bell.
Only 20% of people that are subscribed are actually subscribed. So
Only 40% of people who like the video actually like the video.
yeah, they actually secretly hated it. They went
Yeah,
to
they're
make
like,
alternate accounts and leave dislike stuff.
Yeah, they just want to like your video so that your video blows up and then you get put in the
hot seat. It's for malicious
public
purposes.
eye, and then people tear you apart.
It's malicious purposes that everyone likes and subscribes. Dear God.
I can't wait for this guy to be crushed by his dreams. Hey.
My goodness.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's about
it.
it. We'll figure out some topic for next time. We'll bring on some other nerds. But yeah, that's it for today. Hope y'all enjoyed the discussion on flaws in video games and didn't get too upsetty spaghetti. And yeah, until next time, I guess.
Upsetty spaghetti?
You've never heard me say that?
I don't think so. I don't think I want to hear it again.
Well, my other alternative is espresso depresso.
That one's better. I feel that one. Espresso depresso. Okay. Alright, but yeah, thanks for watching, y'all. Hope you guys liked it. Hope it was interesting. And we'll definitely be back at some point.
At some point here. Someday past tomorrow, we'll be back. So until then, take care and see you